Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another 4chan Stories video, and today we're getting into something a little bit different than the usual 4chan Stories video. While I was looking through some creepy 4chan story archives, I came across a 4chan thread, which led to an insanely interesting, creepy, and utterly terrifying deep dive into a 4chan story and just a whole lot surrounding it. These threads are so interesting, you'll want to stick around. And the story and thread is insanely long, so get comfy, grab a snack, and make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let's get into a terrifying 4chan thread. And before we go any further, I want to thank today's sponsor, MyHeritage. I found MyHeritage incredibly interesting. I planned on being on the website for just 5 minutes, just to check some stuff out. And fast forward an hour later, I was deep in an info rabbit hole about my family. This site is seriously that interesting, and it's honestly so cool learning about your family history. MyHeritage gives you access to over 36 billion historical records. 36 billion. That's military records, marriage certificates, birth and death certificates, census data, newspapers, immigration documents, and so much more. It's honestly like opening up a time capsule for your entire family tree. And what makes it all really easy to use is their instant discoveries feature. Even if you don't know much about your family history, MyHeritage helps you build your tree for you, automatically suggesting matches and adding entire branches in just one click. You don't need to be an expert about your family, the platform does the heavy lifting. And here's something wild I discovered while digging into my own family tree. My ancestor, John Charles Linthicum, a congressman from Maryland, was the one who introduced the bill that made the Star-Spangled Banner the official US national anthem in 1931. He and I both trace back to the same Linthicum ancestor, which makes him my first cousin, 5 times removed. So for my American viewers, every time you hear the American anthem, you can thank my distant cousin for making it official. On top of all those records, MyHeritage also has incredible AI tools. You can colorize old family photos, restore and enhance faded ones, and even animate portraits, which makes connecting to your ancestors feel so much more real. And right now, MyHeritage is offering you a 14-day free trial. Just click the link on screen or scan the QR code, which has been in the corner of your screen, and start exploring your family story today. Once again, that's a 14-day free trial with the link and QR code on screen right now. Go check it out, and I promise, once you dive in, you'll get hooked just like I did. The house that ruined my family. Hello X, since this is the place for creepy shit, I thought I would share with you all the story of a house my family moved into at the beginning of 2000 and lived until 2006. It's going to be a mixture of stories from me and stories that my youngest sister told to me, so bear with me. I'll be typing this out, so I'll be slow. We first moved into the house at the end of January 2000. It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house with a full-size basement that sits off the road about 600 feet from the road. It's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and if anyone shows interest in it, I'll post the address if you want to visit it. It was supposed to be my parents, 3 sisters, me, and my mom's mother and dad. But for about 2 weeks, it was just my parents, sisters, and I. One of the first things we noticed about the place was that the basement door was just 2 loose pieces of plywood chained together, and that the basement had a chalk outline of a person on the wall. The house also had 2 chicken houses and a fence about 50 foot away in the backyard on the side with the hill. The backyard was split into a field about half the size of a football field with forest at the end, and the hill with the chicken houses on it, which was in the woods. The setup of the house was you walk in, the living room was right there, take a right about 20 steps in, and there's a hallway with the bathroom at the end, 2 bedrooms on the left and 1 on the right. The kitchen was off the living room, with the stairs leading down to the basement and the back door sharing the same walkway. The backyard had a set of stairs so you could get up from the field, and a lower driveway that led to the basement. Then there was a block building on the right side of the house with a small basement that was caved in. Sorry for the description, but it's necessary. I had the first bedroom on the left, My 3 sisters shared the second one, and my parents had the one on the right-hand side. The living room had a huge plate glass window that looked out on the front yard and the driveway leading up into the woods to a house about a quarter mile off into the woods, with a farm where the Hells Angels would throw a party every now and then. There was also a creek that ran past the farm and our property. The first night we stayed there, we didn't have our cable or anything hooked up or stuff unpacked, so we were all kind of just trying to get used to things. I was 10 at the time, and my sisters were 9, 8, and 6. We were all fairly normal, though we were kind of abused by our father, me most of all. But besides that, we were a fairly normal family. For the first 3 nights, everything was normal. But the 4th night, our dad was gone to pick up our mom from work, and I was in the living room alone. My sisters were with my grandparents for the weekend, so I had free reign to watch whatever I wanted. I was sitting there flipping channels when I heard something hit the back door. I remember jumping and getting up to see what it was, and seeing an older white guy in a beat-up green beanie, a brown jacket, and a red shirt staring in at me. He wriggled the back door trying to get in, and I took off the phone and called 911. I couldn't remember what the address was, but the operator knew and told me she had a car coming out and stay on the line with her. While I was talking to her, the guy had walked around the house and was standing in the front yard, staring in with a really bugged eye look. Freaked my 10-year-old ass out. He stood there a good 5 minutes before he took off running. Then 30 seconds later, a sheriff came pulling down. They asked me if he was still around, so I told them about what happened, and one of them radioed in while the other walked around looking. That was about the time my parents pulled in. The cops told them what was going on, and my parents took me inside while they looked around. My parents grilled me on what happened, so I told them exactly what he had done. My father didn't believe me, so when the cops came back and said they hadn't seen anyone, he had no problem beating my ass. The guy actually ended up being a big part of the weird stuff that happened. He would peek in through the windows at night at my sisters, try and get in the back door, front door if he knew you were alone, would try and scare you by throwing shit against the walls. My sisters and I were the only ones to see him until my grandma did one night, when she was alone. Said he tried to get in and told her stuff he was going to do to her. Every time we called the cops, they would never find him. And the times we tried to go outside and get him, he'd always get away somehow. We ended up becoming really good friends with the people that lived up the road. It was a family with 3 sons and 2 grandsons that lived with them. Whenever we would hang out, they would tell us weird stories about shit that happened around there. Hell, the first thing the grandpa told us was to stay out of the woods at night and to get out of them before it got dark because the wood elves would get you. We never believed him until my sister and I were walking back home one night. No moon and there were no lights on the road. We start hearing twigs break and whispering, then start seeing little lights moving through the woods. We take off running for home and they follow us until we cross the creek. Then it stops. We never walked the road again at night unless there was a lot of us, and we had a lot of flashlights and knives. Back to the house. The basement was the creepiest part of it. The stairs had no rails, there were only 2 lights, and someone had put a shelf on the right of the stairs and killed all light from hitting the corner where the breaker was. Literally everyone who went in there got a bad feeling. The activity that happened down there would be low muttering, footsteps on the concrete floor, lights would blow, and if you're down there in the dark, stuff would brush up against you. About 2 months in, the realty people finally put a real garage door in the basement, but it would still flood if it rained hard enough. Whenever it would do that, you could sometimes see something move through the water, and the one time our father saw it, he blamed water dripping from the ceiling. There's also a story my sister told me about the basement. One day she was home alone. It was about the last year we lived there, when she got the urge to go into the basement. She said once she was down there, the wall opened up and something stuck its head out, looked at her, grinned, and started crawling out. She took off running upstairs and waited outside until our parents got home, then had me down there once I got home to see if it was down there. I didn't see anything, but it did feel weirder down there. There's a story from where me, the oldest sister, and one of her friends were hanging out in the basement. Her friend started shit-talking and whatever it was down there. Then both lights blew and something laughed. We beelined it upstairs and stayed. And her friend went on to actually develop a really bad case of schizophrenia and committed S-word about 4 years later. Probably not connected, but still weird. There was a van that came down the driveway one day when my youngest sis and I were dicking around outside. I'd say I was 13, and she was 9 or 10. We were walking up the road when we heard a girl scream from the direction the van went. We took off running and hid in the woods to see what was going on. Saw the van rocking. The girl screamed again. I told my sister to run home and call the cops, so she did. I sat there for a little longer when the back door opened on the van, and a guy looked out and around, then got out and walked to the driver door. Guy got in and left. I took off through the woods back home. Sis had called the cops, but they didn't get there in time to stop him. We're pretty sure someone got R-worded and we were too pussy to stop it. I hope that's not the case. There was one year when it iced really bad and knocked the power out, where we heard what sounded like a baby crying in the woods, and we would wake up to claw marks on the screen door. Another time, something killed our 2 dogs, chewed them up really badly, and they weren't small dogs. On the flip side of that, we had an immortal rooster. Wild dogs would get him up and rip him up pretty bad, then he'd show up a few days later perfectly fine. One of our dogs actually got a hold of him and bit his head completely off. We tossed him in the woods in front of our house, and 3 days later, he's back and pissed off. My sister also got adopted by the weirdest kitten I've ever seen. It walked right out of the woods up to her, sat down and looked at her as if saying to pick her up. Damn thing was the color of fire with jet black tips on its fur and the clearest blue eyes. Thing got really big, then just disappeared. But now that the little shit is out of the way, I can get to the effed up stuff. There was some sort of demon in the main house that effed my family up. We went from somewhat normal to me, a effed up 28-year-old that has night terrors and needs therapy, oldest sis, which turned out to be the most normal but still effing a 30-year-old at 16, second oldest who can't hold a job or relationship, has 2 kids and the fathers are shit, then my youngest sis, batshit crazy, PTSD, schizo, multiple personality. My mom passed away in 2011. My father is a cokehead now. In his own words, keeps me faster than the demons. This thing looked weird, had a steer skull with blood that pooled out of the eye holes, wore a black suit and would appear at all times of the day. Whenever he showed up, something bad always happened. Once he showed up and 30 minutes later, 3 guys jumped my father and almost killed him. He ended up getting a steel plate put in the back of his head because of it. Another time he showed up and not even 5 minutes later, we got the call that our grandma had been killed. My sis told me that he showed up before she got R-worded, and the only story I'm able to get out of the oldest sis that he showed up the night she was in a horrible car wreck that effed her up from having kids. He showed up to me one more night and when I was working third. Then I ended up getting robbed and beaten pretty badly. The one time it ever actually touched one of us, it was my youngest sister, and it left a mark. That's around the time she really started having mental issues. My grandparents had a bed in the living room. We were kind of poor, to be honest. When it first started showing up is when our father started doing cocaine and other shit again. He'd done it in his younger years, but had stopped when I was born. He'd come home, steal money, beat my mom and us, then go off for days at a time. Whenever he was gone, it never really showed up. But when it did, we knew he was about to come home. It seemed like the more he did it, and the more he hurt us, the clearer we would see it and the more often. Our mom would see it, but she would pretend not to and ignore us if we asked her about it. The last 2 years we were there were the most active times it would show up. And the last time we saw it, it was the day we moved out. The moving truck stalled and we barely got it going again. Someone almost hit us. I figured it was just from our imagination, but I ended up moving back into the place for a few months in 2010. I lived there for about 4 months before I said fuck it in the lease and moved out. The guy was still there. Me and a few friends actually ran out and tried to catch him with guns, but nothing. There were now loud banging in the basement every night. I stopped going down there when I did, the first few times to see nothing, but for it to start back up again once I was upstairs. I came home one day to see someone standing in the living room, looking at my curtains, but no one was in the house. The night I woke up to my car alarm going off and finding bloody handprints on it was when I said fuck it and moved out. Now, as far as I know, no one lives there and the place is in pretty bad shape. And then people start replying with their own comments on this thread. Someone said, there were ghosts and monsters prowling in the woods and targeting your family, and you Made the dog sleep outside with the demons? And then he replied with, no, we had a dog door they could get out of whenever we weren't home. They got out one night because they heard something and they didn't come back. No problem, mate. Just glad someone is reading. My therapist says it's good to talk about them. I should clarify something. My sister wasn't R-worded as a child. That happened when she was 20, but it happened in that house. She picked up my lease. When was the first time your father accepted an event as a paranormal? It sounded like he was the type to write things off, as with water moon in the basement being a result of dripping water. Sounds like his energy was connected in a way to the demon. Drug use can exacerbate encounters with dark entities. Don't mean to sound like Scully or anything, but it seems like an amalgamation of cramped living space, drug use, and impoverished conditions all feeding into one another and breeding into more misfortune and mental instability. Sometimes, it's just life being shitty. Yeah, it is good to talk. Hope you can move on from it as much as you can, but that won't be easy given all messed up things that happened. Not saying I do or don't believe in the paranormal, but from other credible stories I've read, these entities appear to feed off fear and despair, which given your family's history would leave you more prone to these attacks. Stay safe, Anon. Everyone turns out to be mentally unstable. Sorry, OP, but I bet my money that there were no ghosts in that house. It seems like you're all genetically burdened by various mental issues. And then he goes on to reply to many of the questions we just went over. To be honest, I can't really remember, and I can't ask him because quite frankly, the two of us don't get along and I don't approve of some of the shit he does. My mom finally admitted creepy shit happened when I was older, told me stuff had happened when she was alone but would never talk about them. It's hard to get over stuff like that, but I'm trying. So maybe it just needs a Herculean effort on my part to block it out. I wish that were the case, but our family had no history of mental illnesses up until we started. And then the final answer is, once the guy who came out to try was a Southern Baptist preacher. He did a walkthrough, threw some holy water around, read passages from the Bible. It seemed to work for about a week before it showed up. And that's around the time my grandma died. Did the demon ever say anything? Address, OP? The address is there, but I'm not going to put it on YouTube because that's doxing. But he just leaves the address and then people can check it out. And then it goes on to say, if you do, don't go alone just for safety's sake, in case some homeless people are squatting in it now. And then he says, not to me, to the demon question. And then someone replies to the address question. And then he says, the little one-story one, I think I found it on Google Maps. Some spooky shit, senpai. Especially walking up that road with his wood elves. Was this the House of Horrors, OP? Yup, that one. And you can see the house. I'm going to blur the address just for reasons I just mentioned. But yeah, you can see the surrounding woods. You can see the house. So yeah, everyone found it. And then he goes on to talk about, no, that was where a really creepy old guy lived until he died. That's from 2008 to 2009. I had this thought too. If there was a spirit, it was probably attracted by all the negativity and shit, rather than causing it. If that's the case, why did my sister see it when she was living there alone? What? Your sister is immune to negativity or something? This thread dead? Got more stories? Not to be macabre, just human curiosity. What were the circumstances of your sister's R-word or other misery stories that have befell you or your family that you attribute to the house? Good bread, bump. Also, just so I got this straight, you had the old guy with the weird eyes who repeatedly turns up staring through your windows or trying to get into the house, and you've got the steer-skulled demon with bleeding eyes showing up regularly in the house? And he replies to the stories question, a few stories. As for her R-word, she was home alone. Someone forced their way into the basement, came upstairs, smacked her with something, then proceeded to do it. Cops got prints from the basement door and DNA, but never caught anyone. And yeah, the demon inside and the guy outside. And then he answers to the, what, your sister is immune to negativity or something? And he just says, no, far from it. So that means his sister, is negative, so maybe that's what the demon is feeding off of. Need more stories, OP. Shit had me up all night and I need to hear more. Something else that happened took place during a snowstorm that came up about 2 years into us living there. Our car couldn't get up the driveway, so my parents would have me bundle up and walk up to the gas station about half a mile up the road. They had me go out one night because we needed kerosene to keep our heaters going and toilet paper for obvious reasons. It was around 9:30 at night, so it was dark, but I started off up the road. When I got about halfway past where the crazy old guy, let's call him Dallas, lived, and he walked out and called over to me to be careful because there had apparently been an accident up the road. I didn't pay any mind to it until I saw a car off in a ditch and a dead deer laying not too far from where the road was. It was apparent that the car had hit the deer and then skidded off the road. But by then, someone had already gotten whomever was in the car. I got to the gas station, filled up the kerosene jug and grabbed a few packs of TP, then headed home. When I got down to where the car was, the deer was missing with a trail that looked like something had dragged it through the snow. I freaked out a little and sped my pace up, made it home and thought nothing of it. Later that night though, I'd say it was about 2 in the morning, we woke up to something loud hitting the left side of the house nearest the living room. Our father walked out to see if maybe a tree had fallen and hit the side of the house, but apparently someone had decided to throw a severed deer head against the wall. It weirded us out, of course, and my parents called the police, who took forever to get out there. They, of course, didn't find anything and told us to be on guard. Every winter after that, something similar would happen, but not always a deer. Sometimes it would be a dead possum or raccoon or rabbit. This isn't one of mine, but I got the oldest sister to tell me something during a call this morning. She said she was around 13 years old and home alone for some reason. She went to the bathroom, which had a really small window in it right by the toilet, and she heard something rustling around outside. She thought nothing of it until she got out and walked into the living room. Someone had thrown something liquid on the big bay window and written, "I'll be watching you," in it. Then something slammed into the back door hard enough to knock one of the glass panes out of it. She called the cops, and while talking, someone tried sticking a hand in the window, but the dog we had at the time ran up and latched onto it. The person screamed and jerked their hand back, but she said it wasn't a normal scream, then took off. Cops got there, took samples and pics of the bay window, then looked to see if the dog had bitten hard enough to draw blood, which he hadn't. They did find a glove with hairs in it though. That's all she'd tell me though. Sorry. Didn't abandon. I have work and school shit to do. I'm sorry that writing isn't my forte, but that doesn't give you a reason to be an ass now, does it? And then someone says, didn't know the mascot for JFAC was in the haunting business. And then he says the skull was more fucked up, but close enough. How fucked up was the skull? Any discernible features? Ruins or symbols? And this is them talking about the demon skull. The horns were carved with something in a spiral. The nose area looked like it had been crushed by a hammer. It wasn't the white bones get when they've been sun bleached either, more like they had been buried. And in the center of the forehead area, there was a mark, but I don't recall what it looked like. Good thread, OP. Scary stories indeed. But why, after all you experienced as a child, decided to move back there later? Also, did you try to look for the house's background story? I moved back to North Carolina from Wisconsin and needed a place quick. It was cheap and I had 2 roommates willing to move in with me at first, but they backed out at the last moment. No problem, mate. Just glad someone is enjoying them. Also, my younger sister and I talked earlier today, and she brought up the creepy stuff that would happen after midnight if we were still outside. I remember one instance clearly, and I'll share it. For background, our bonfires were usually after us holding a get-together for friends and family and eating homemade chicken stew, and the adults getting drunk and going inside while leaving us, kids outside, to dig around in the fire. We would hold them in the backyard in the field, until one year, our father switched them to the front yard, in his words, to keep a better eye on you kids after we come inside. My father didn't give 2 shits about us, so that caught me off guard at the time, but I never put 2 and 2 together. This particular instance happened in late November of 2004, as a late birthday party for me. As such, my best friend at the time was over, 2 more of my friends, the oldest sister had a friend over, and my other 2 sisters were the only kids there. It was after 12 and we were doing regular kid stuff when left alone with the fire, setting the ends of branches on fire and twirling them around, making the fire bigger, telling stories and all that. Of course, my sisters and I told them about the wood elves and how something creepy lived in the woods, but they didn't believe us. It was about that time we started hearing branches in the trees rustle like a squirrel was jumping from them, but there was just a lot of them and moving fast. One of my friends had a flashlight with him, and he turned it on and shined it into the trees. There were dozens of little eyes reflecting back from the shadows, and he quickly turned it off. We all kind of looked at each other. Then a large branch flew out of the woods and landed not far from where my sisters were sitting. They screamed and took off, and we were quick to follow. We all ran back into the house, and the adults asked us what was wrong, and we quickly told them what we saw. They of course didn't believe us, so we insisted that they go outside and look for themselves. 3 of them, younger guys our mom worked with, went outside with a flashlight for each of them, and they scanned the woods for a good 5 minutes before coming back to report they hadn't seen a thing. The adults got mad, sent us to our rooms, and that was the end of that. She was 16 when she started sleeping with the 30-year-old. Sorry for the confusion. Trust me, if I had another choice, I would have taken it, but it was extremely cheap and I didn't have a lot of cash at the time. As for being far from it, I live in a town about 12 miles away and in a much better place. Thanks for a wonder. Not from that area, no. And you wouldn't be too far wrong with that. Before anyone asks, the only reason I moved back was because I felt like I had to. It happened every time I moved out of state. The longer I was gone, the worse I would feel. But that could just be homesickness or some bullshit. So you live in this house where a plethora of crazy weird shit happens, some of it seemingly paranormal, some seemingly because of fucked up people around you, and yet you and your sister both decide to return there years later. Maybe try to write up for yourself at last and correlated events and timelines with your family, then look if something shows up. Admittedly, by the time I moved back, I was a lot more ballsy and had a lot more guns than I had when I was younger, so I figured I'd be good. I'm actually a guy. I might give that a shot. If you go, be careful, and if you can't take someone with you, at least take a weapon. If he doesn't, I'll head that way sometime this week and get a few pictures. All I have is a cell phone, but it's better than nothing. OP, what crazy stories did your neighbors tell you about the place? Also, I have about an hour and a half before I gotta crash, so I can share a few more stories the neighbors told us. For reference, up until about 2005 to 2006, they had a mini scrapyard of vehicles on their land on side-by-side house, the right side, and then a large 2-story garage with an apartment over it on the left side with a driveway going around the house and hooking up with the main driveway out of the woods. Behind the house is a large hill that slopes down to some land an old Hell's Angel owns. It's pretty much a bare strip of land, a little longer than a football field, and about as wide, with nothing but trees around it and dingy little runoff pond with an old zip line over it. They also always owned a lot of dogs. At the very least, 6 of them. They told us it helped keep away the wood elves to keep them from throwing shit through the windows or messing with the people that lived over the garage. Also, their dogs had a high turnover rate, as in one would go missing at least every 2 to 3 months, unless it was winter where they would lose at least 4 before it ended. They always had the same breeds as well, Rottweiler and Chow Chow. Anyway, one of the first stories they told us was about how one night, after they had first moved in, they lived there a good 12 years before we moved in, 2 of their sons had been chased out of the woods by the wood elves, and the elves had started throwing rocks and branches through the windows. Apparently, they had saw one and decided to throw a thick branch at it. They said it had hit it, and it fell over and started shrieking like a cat that had its tail stepped on. And suddenly there were dozens of them in the trees and bushes. They took off running and they took chase after them. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds like something they'd do. I should make something clearer. The neighbors had their grandma and grandpa, their 2 sons, and one of the sons of the 2 sons and his wife living there. It was a fairly decent sized house with 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 down, and of course the one above the garage. One of the uncles was paralyzed from the waist down and was the one who lived in the basement room, with his brother and wife in the room off of the living room, the 2 sons in the middle bedroom across from the bathroom, and the 2 grandparents in the room off the kitchen. This is all important later. The house had a lot of windows, 20 in the first floor alone, and a lot of them were at least 10 foot off the ground. The only rooms to have windows you could reach from the house was the living room, bathroom, the kitchen, and of course the basement room. I became really good friends with the paralyzed uncle. Let's call him Bill because he was big into video games and shit. One night when I was hanging out with him, he asked me if I had wanted to hear about one of his creepy experiences, and of course, I said sure. I remember this part very clearly because up until that point, I had never really saw a gun up close. He pulled out a pump-action shotgun from beside his bed, then pulled a pistol from underneath his pillow, said he hadn't had them for too long, maybe a year. Then he started talking about how one night everyone but him was gone. It was about 12:30 at night, and he was playing something on a PS1 when he heard the outside basement door open up. He thought it was someone from the family coming home, so he ignored it. But then his doorknob started jiggling. He picked up the closet thing he had, which was a 25-pound weight, and got ready just in case. He said about a minute passed before it stopped, and his door started slowly opening. He said something that looked like the pick related walked in and stopped, looking right at him. He said that it had looked confused to see someone in the room, and he said that for some reason, the way its eyes were freaked him out, so he had screamed and threw the weight at it. It shrieked and took off out of the room and out of the still open outside door, and he grabbed another weight in case it came back. He had to sit there for about an hour afterwards waiting for someone to come home. Said the whole time he could see these stuff dart around in the shadows outside. Said when he heard tires on the gravel, he started yelling as loud as he could until his brother and father ran downstairs and saw the open doors. He told them what happened, said he wanted some guns, and his dad literally went out the next day and bought him the shotgun and pistol. He said it never happened again, though stuff would scratch at the window above his bed. The son's first story they told my sisters and I was about their first dog that went missing. Their parents insisted on getting a dog for the two boys, so they both agreed on a black Chow Chow male from the pound named Lucius, the name he answered to. This dog loved them both to death, was pretty much their shadow whenever they would go off to play in the woods around the house. Lucius would sometimes take off after something into the bushes every now and then, but would never leave the boys' sight and would always come back when they called him. They were out playing one time, a little later than normal because they'd gotten a little Daisy BB gun and were shooting old cans, when they noticed that the sun had started setting. They took off for home since they were a good ways away and didn't want to get into trouble. When Lucius took off after something in the brush, this time when they called him, he didn't come back. So they figured he'd come home later and decided to run without him to keep from getting in trouble. They said they were about 50 yards away from the house when they heard Lucius bark, then yelp from behind them. At that point, they were close enough for their dad to see them because he was waiting, and he came running into the woods to see what was going on because he'd heard it as well. He told them to head home and he'd get a few friends to look for the dog, which he did, but they didn't stay out in the woods for too long after dark. So he told them he'd try again the next day. He was saved from that though, when the next morning they woke up and the dog's collar was sitting square in the middle of their welcome mat on the front porch. Their dad told them to forget about that dog, that someone had found the collar, and them putting it on the porch like that meant that he was missing. They didn't argue with him, and they were too young to really understand at the time. Fuck the woods, to be honest. I just remembered a good one for you guys. I'll tell you about the summer of 2002. That summer, all kinds of creepy shit happened, but it all came to a head one night. Some idiot had wrecked his car into one of the utility poles and knocked all power out for our area. Since it was summer and hot as hell, we had to open the windows for it to be remotely comfortable indoors. Both us and our neighbors had done this before we tried to get some rest. And this was about 12 a.m. because we'd waited up to see if the power would be restored that night. About 12:15 at night, and this is what they told us. Our neighbors had started hearing one of the boys outside calling up to be let in. It was coming from under the window in the boys' room, so it took little for it to wake their father or grandparents up. It did wake the two boys up though, who had thoroughly freaked out. When it did wake their dad up, he got pissed thinking of course one of his sons was outside trying to get their brother to let them in, so he opens his door pissed off and stomping towards the door that led into the basement. He stopped when he saw his two sons stick their head out and shake it, them whispering that it wasn't them, and luckily the voice called out about then as well as to prove it. By this time, everyone in the house is awake and listening to it, and this goes on for about 10 minutes before it starts circling the house. The dogs are going crazy, Bill is in the basement calling out, wondering what the hell is going on, and it's just general confusion. Their dad decides to call down to our house with their cell phone. Our mom had a cell phone for work, and asked us if we would come up and get the boys because something was wrong. My mom, being the kind lady she was, decides to wake our father up and have him drive her up the road so they can pick up the boys. He's of course pissed off that he got woken up, so he wakes me up really roughly to keep an eye out while they're gone. Virginian here, fuck North Carolina. They get dressed, head out, and head up the driveway in our old police Inceptor Crown Victoria. Our mom had picked it up at a charity auction about 5 years before. I love that car. I know the ride up takes a bit, especially at night, because the road is really just a dirt road with some spots of light gravel, and the rest being large dips and washed out parts. So I'm sitting in the living room with a few candles lit and trying to read to pass the time. At that point, I'm the only one awake in my house, with my sisters being asleep in the back room on the far left side of the house. If you've ever been in the middle of the woods when the power goes out and there's a new moon, you know how dark it gets. I was sitting in the recliner across from the bay window, so I could see the headlights when they were coming in. So that kind of darkness is what I was staring out at. I remember sitting there for a good 15 minutes, waiting for them to get back, when I heard the bushes on the hill closest to my house move. I didn't think anything of it because we got possums and raccoons around there a lot, but I got weirded out when it stopped underneath the air conditioner in the living room. It was a good minute of silence before something smacked the air conditioner grate hard enough to shake it, which made me jump out of the car and grip a little dinky softball bat. The sound had woke my sisters up, and they funneled into the living room asking what had happened. About that time, whatever it was smacked it again, causing the three of them to shriek. I, being the oldest, felt like it was my responsibility to keep my sisters safe, so I remember telling them to stay in the middle of the room, that I was going to check it out. I grabbed one of the spotlights we owned, walked to the front door, said a quick prayer, then stepped outside and flicked on the light to look around. I took my time in looking in the front yard, not wanting anything hiding to jump me. And then someone replies to the fuck North Carolina comment saying, "Mates, I'm right fucking there with you, but it's home." I'm not gonna lie, I was really fucking scared walking over to the side. Like that balls are so shriveled it's painful fear. I remember peeking around the side slowly and seeing one of the little bastards running off towards the chicken coop that we were actually using to keep chickens at the time. I pretty much mentally said fuck it and ran back inside. And about then we spotted a car's headlight coming around the bend from the neighbors. We all sit in the living room and watched as they pulled in. Our father getting out first and holding a shotgun the neighbors had let them borrow. Next was our mom, who opened the back of the car for the neighbors' sons to get out of. I walked to the front door and held it open, the spotlight acting as a kind of beacon, and they all four ran inside. Our father telling me to lock and deadbolt the door and for us to stay away from the windows. My mom told me to follow her to the bedroom while our father stayed in the living room, and she told me to let her two dogs out of their kennels while she got her pistol. She'd gotten her permits and CCW a few years earlier. She was a waitress and one of her regulars became a really creepy stalker, so she got in it for those late nights she worked. She never let us see it, so her doing that made it click in my head that something was really wrong. I let our two dogs out, a blue Merrill Great Dane and a Rottweiler Chow Chow mix, and they were both tense as hell. You could tell in the way their tails and eyes were. We kept hearing stuff move around in the woods outside for another hour before something hit the air conditioner again. Except this time, it didn't stop, just kept banging. Then something started in on the bathroom window. Then something started scratching at our front door. That kept on for about 2 hours before it started tapering off. Also, fuck basements too. I'm gonna use a name, just to help differentiate myself from other Anons, because he renames himself NC Anon for North Carolina Anon. And then he continues on saying, I also feel I should give you all a little bit more information about the rest of the property. As I stated below, there was a large farm plot that was owned by a Hell's Angel. What I failed to say is that he also owned a lot more. The large football-esque field he owned, and also a patch of it with a few older buildings on it in the woods. While he didn't mind us going onto the farm property, as long as he was there with other people, he absolutely hated us going anywhere near the other places. Hated it to a point he started putting booby traps to keep people out. He actually had someone that lived at the top of the hill with a decent view of the football field that he paid to call him if they saw anyone on it. Also, I should say that this Hell's Angel in particular was named Joe Smith, and he'd apparently run the NC chapter for a long time. The only reason I'm telling you all this is so if you want to do a little background info to see if I'm bullshitting, you'll see that I'm not. One thing about his land though was that it didn't have defined borders, and the only creek that was on it ran through his lands and ours. So if you followed it, you were bound to end up on his property eventually. The only reason I bring up the creek is because my next story involves it. The creek ran from underneath the main road, then snaked its way through our land and Joe's. Whenever it was warm, I would walk it and look for rocks and crayfish. Plus, when I got a pellet rifle, I would hunt squirrels and rabbits as well. Once my youngest sister got herself a pellet rifle, she started coming with me. One day, when we were out there, we were in one of the bigger bends in the creek, and there was a small beach, complete with sand that we decided to stop on for a little break. At this point, I'm 16 and she's 11, and we routinely did this to get away from the house as much as possible, as long as we were out of the woods before dark. We were resting when my sister pointed out some tracks in the sand that stood out. I stood up and walked over to check them out, and that's when it hit me. They were baby tracks. Like a little toddler wearing shoes had appeared out of thin air, took 8 steps, then disappeared. There were no tracks leading up to it or away, so it creeped us out, but we decided to keep going. A little farther up the creek, we started hearing what sounded like a baby crying, which sent me into alert mode because I was always told if you're in the woods and you hear something like that, it's a cougar. I told my sister as much, and we started heading back. When he neared the beach from earlier, we saw more of the little tracks and decided that we should beeline it back home. The whole hike back, we kept hearing something move in the woods, and every now and then, we'd hear the baby cry. But we didn't see anything and made it back home without incident. And then someone replies to the thread with a link and then says, "This place," with a picture, and then says, "This basement sure does look a little bit concentration camp looking." And then OP says, "I'll tell one more, then I gotta head out for the night." That same summer of 2002 is when I started getting left home alone a lot for my parents to take my sisters out for stuff. I didn't mind too much because I could stay home and play whatever I wanted and eat whatever I wanted. I remember this particular night, my parents had taken my sister out to a movie, then to a restaurant afterwards, so I was home alone a good 4 hours. The oldest of the 2 neighbors' sons was down with me, and we were playing something. I don't remember what, but we were in my room, which was in the middle of the house. The way I had my room set up, the bed was against the window. I had my TV set up at the foot of my bed, and my closet was always open because I had an air vent in it. We were sitting on the bed, dicking around when, somehow, my TV comes unplugged. We both wonder what the hell happened, and I go to plug it back in when he taps me on the back and points at the TV. In the reflection, you could see someone staring in through my window. I immediately flip my shit, grab the softball bat, and run out to the kitchen and make sure they aren't trying to get into the back door. Meanwhile, the neighbor, let's call him Brandon, picks up another bat and waits in my room for the all clear. While I run into the kitchen, I see someone run around the right side of the house towards my front door, and they start beating on it. I yell at Brandon to go call the cops, and I run to the door to make sure it's locked and deadbolted. He calls to me and says the line is dead. We're on our own. We're both freaked out. The person is still beating on the front door. We're trying to figure out what to do. So I decide, fuck it, let's get some knives. We grab my father's big Bowie knife he kept sharpening for hunting, some chef's knives from the kitchen, and we barricade the front door and back door as much as possible. And then we sit in the living room, waiting. Holy fuck, that's the place. And that's OP replying to the picture from earlier. And then the OP continues the story saying, whoever it is has stopped banging on the front door and has instead started walking around the house, hitting the sides of the walls at various points. Occasionally, they would smack a window, but not too many times. This kept on for the entire time they were gone, not stopping until my family started pulling in the driveway. We unbarricaded the front door, and that caused us to get questioned, so we told them what happened. My father grabbed a bat and walked outside to look around while my mom called the cops to come out. They did, took fingerprints from a few of the windows, stayed out there until the phone repairman came out and fixed our line, then kept the car up the road in case it happened again. Well, I can tell no one has lived there in a long time. The middle room and the room on the left side of the house are the same color my sister painted them while she lived there. That was in 2010. Alright, I gotta get to sleep. I'll be back tomorrow night with pictures. Hopefully we didn't paint completely over the outline of the wall. Did you tell your neighbors about the guy watching you from outside? Hey, I'm en route home to get a few things and head over there. They moved from their house about 2 years after my sister moved, and I really only talk to one of the guys anymore. The neighbors knew about him, but he rarely went as far up the road to get to their house. OP here. Went up to the place and the guy who owns it was there. Told him I was there to look at the place because I'm interested in buying. They asked if I could take a look inside. He told me to come back Friday with an appointment. Waited around at a friend's house for a few hours to see if he'd leave it in that time. Went back and he was still there at 5:30 EST. Sorry, I couldn't get in to take some pics. I wonder what experiences did the people living there after you have. There are so many things to uncover, but as I understood, you don't want to mess further with these things? Nah, I'd like to know the history behind the place myself. Plus, my therapist thinks it's a good idea to try and remember the things my mind just blanked out. Says it'll help me get over the nightmares and night terrors. I'm all eyes for the new stories. Also, do you approximately know how much people per square mile live in that area? I have no idea, to be honest, but if I had to guess, I'd say somewhere close to 100 people. Also, I'm really bloody tired tonight, so I've only time to share one more story with you all. This happened during the summer of 2005. I had a group of friends over to hang out with and play paintball with in our woods. Although there were 12 of us, and of my neighbors had brought his little 9-year-old brother with him because he had to babysit. The part of the woods we decided to use was not too far from my neighbor's house, and we were using an old tobacco barn and house as our bases, one on one side of the driveway and the other on the other side. We got started about 11 that morning, and we were planning on playing until about dusk, when we planned on heading back to my place to go our separate ways. We're all between 14 to 16 years old, have a pretty decent knowledge base when it comes to the woods, and we all have at least a pocket knife on us, so we aren't completely helpless. We keep playing for a few hours and stop close at 2 to take a lunch break, and that's when a few of my friends asked me if the woods are always that quiet. It getting quiet was usually a sign that the wood elves were out and about and keeping an eye on things, so I told them it happened a lot and not to worry about it, to keep from sounding crazy in front of my friends. We finished lunch, then headed back into the woods for some more firefights. Fast forward about an hour, and we're both holding still when we hear one of the guys start yelling and shooting off into the woods with his gun. Then the crashing of him running through the brush back towards us. My team gets ready to light him up when we notice there's blood coming from the back of his head. So we call for a timeout to check him out and see if he's all right. We get him sat down and start washing the blood off his head with a canteen one of our guys had. He starts talking about how he'd been in some brush laying still away from the rest of his team when he'd heard movement behind him. He didn't think anything of it, thinking that it was some of his team moving up. He said it was about 30 seconds after it stopped that something hit him in the head hard enough to knock him out for a bit, but he'd woken up to something dragging him through the woods. He said he raised his head and saw little stick bastards with vines wrapped around his ankles pulling him, and that's when he started screaming and shooting. The rest of the guys laughed it off and said he must have hallucinated from hitting his head, but he insisted that he knew what he saw. I, of course, knew immediately what he was talking about, but still said nothing, so I didn't seem weird. I did suggest that we head back early though, just so we can get a better look at his head and make sure he was actually alright. We start heading down the driveway, him between two of us to keep an eye on him, and he's constantly looking back and around at the woods with eyes as wide as a plate. Get about halfway down when he started screaming and takes off running for my house. A few of the guys going after him but not able to catch up to him. I look back while the rest of the guys are talking among themselves and I see movement in the trees and bushes, and I know then why he took off running. We get to my place. He's sitting on the porch with a phone in hand, telling his mom to come pick him up. The guys that chased him looking worried because they'd never seen him act like that before. Long story short, the wood elves tried to knock one of my friends out and drag him off to do who knows what with him. He ended up moving a few months later, was never really the same while he was still around, refused to go near the woods, sold all his hunting gear, and would flip shit whenever someone brought that day up. Have you heard from him since he was that young? Wondering if he is still shrunken up or did worse. Not from him, no, but I talked to his sister about 8 months back. He moved to Texas, far from any trees, and has to take meds for something. I never thought I'd get this many replies, holy golden shit. Plus, since I kind of passed out on you guys last night, I'll try to share a few more stories to make up for it. First one I'll tell is about the night I spent the night in the woods by myself. This happened about a week after my birthday in November, and I was 17. It already started hitting the 20s at night, and the majority of the trees were bare, besides the pines. I was sitting in my room dicking around trying to fix a PS2 a friend of mine had bought me to see if I could get up and running again when my father walked into my room and stood there for a bit watching me. He started talking about how I didn't know what the fuck I was doing and that I should give up. And since I was in my head working, I said the first thing that came to mind, which happened to be tell him to go choke on a dick. He stepped over and grabbed me by the shoulder and asked what the hell I just said. So I repeated it because I figured I might as well dig my hole deeper. He took a swing on me, missed, and I took that chance to hit him as hard as I could in the jaw, which ended up him falling through a table I had and laying there. My brain then realized what I had done, and I panicked, grabbed an old army field jacket I always wore into the woods, and made a beeline for the front door, then took off into the woods. I made it about halfway up the driveway before I realized that he'd know that I ran from my neighbors, so I decided instead to dip into the woods and go to ground in one in the old barns scattered throughout the woods. The one I chose had a little door on the backside, where I guessed whomever had used it had put extra wood for easy access, and the main door which made out of wooden slats. Both doors were relatively intact, so I closed up both and sat in a corner to wait out my father. I sat there for a good bit of time and started noticing it getting dark out. I never made an appointment, so I have no idea if he will be or not. It getting dark out started sending off the alarm bells in my head to just sprint out of the woods and take whatever ass kicking I was about to get from him. But by that age, I was too stubborn to listen to anything, so I kept sitting there. By the time the sun went completely down, I had been in the barn for almost 4 hours and was starting to get really cold. Shorts and a field jacket aren't exactly great cold weather gear. I started looking through the jacket pockets and luckily found a book of matches I usually kept on me if I was going into the woods for any amount of time. But I hesitated to try and start a fire, thinking if I did, someone would see it and come looking. The wood elves weren't even on my mind at this point either, since I was inside a structure with doors. But as the night wore on my brain, started thinking on them. That was when I noticed that things were starting to quiet down in the woods around me. Being in the middle of the woods at night, in a building, means you're sitting in pretty much total darkness, which I will admit freaked me out a bit. But then something happened that made me almost shit myself. I started hearing stuff moving through the tree branches towards my hiding spot, then stop a good 10 feet from the barn. I sat there, straining my ears to hear anything, when something jumped on the roof of the barn. Sounded like something light, almost like a squirrel. It was followed by 3 more, then silence. At this point, I decided to say fuck it. I'm getting a fire going. And start trying to gather what materials I could use in the barn by matchlight. I managed to grab an armful of old leaves, some pieces of old wood, and managed to get a small fire going in what looked like an old stone fire pit in the center of the barn. The fire wasn't too big, but it did illuminate the rest of the barn well enough that I could see if I was alone. Luckily, I was, and the fire gave me a sense of security as well as helped warm me up. So I sat close to it, my back against one of the walls. That was when I started hearing something digging at the roof. If you've ever seen a hamster or a similar rodent digging, think of that, just a lot louder and about as fast. I looked up towards the sound, and that's when I heard the noise at the small door on the back of the barn. At this point, I am more than scared and feel trapped, so I admit that I start freaking out a little. I'm pacing the barn and looking for anything I could use as a weapon when I remember that if it's the wood elves, they're made of wood, and I have a fire going, so I form a plan. I start looking for a few sticks big enough to act as a torch, find 2 that'll suit my needs, then set about making torches. I take off my jacket, then remove the shirt I was wearing, then start tearing it into strips and wrapping them around the branches, then get both torches going. I figured more fire would make them leave me the fuck alone. At this point, it's been close to an hour since I started the fire though, and it's starting to die. So I decided to man up and take one of the torches and set just outside the front door to see if I can gather a bit more wood and fuel for it, because I am not staying in the barn without a fire going. I stick the torch in a hole in the wall to act like a porch light. Then as fast as I can, I grab a couple big armfuls of leaves and toss them inside. Then grab as many loose branches as I can, toss them in, grab 2 huge ones laying nearby to act as a barricade for the door, then grab the torch and head inside to set about making work. I should make it clear that at this point it's about 8:30 by my estimate, and I'm wondering if I have enough fuel to keep the fire going all night. I decide to chance it and start barricading the doors as well as I can with the 2 large branches I brought in, then sit down to wait. Me sitting didn't last too long, as the scratching was getting worse on the roof and at the back door, so I took the torches and sat one on each end of the barn to act as a bit more light. The scratching at the back door stopped as soon as I put one near the door, and I heard scurrying from it. So I thought that maybe it had been a raccoon or possum and not an elf. That's when the scratching on the roof got worse, and any thoughts of it being an animal left my mind. It started spreading out all over the roof, like it was testing for a weak spot, and I sat there looking up and wondering if I was about to get attacked from the rafters. This went on for about 30 minutes, then stopped abruptly, like it had never happened. I'm sitting there listening hard as hell, and that's when something hits the wall where I'm sitting. I jump up, cussing and almost pissing myself, and grab another branch from the pile, sticking the end of it in the fire and hoping it catches on so I have another torch of sorts to use as weapon. That's when I see a reflection coming from one of the holes at the bottom of the wall. I leave the stick in the fire so it can catch on, then get on my belly to try and see what the reflection is coming from, but it moves before I finish, and I stop dead, knowing what I just saw. I'm starting to get pissed now because I'm cold, tired, and I really just want this bullshit to end. So I walk towards the front door, move the branch from in front of it, grab the torch, and step outside. I remember saying something about how if they wanted me, they weren't getting me without a fight, and standing there trying to look like a badass while trying to not piss myself because what I'm doing is batshit stupid. I stand there about 3 minutes, then decide to step back inside. I turn around and something smacks me in the back between my shoulders hard enough to almost make me fall, and I spin around to see if I can catch a glimpse of whatever it was. And then someone replies with a picture of the driveway to the house, and he said, I would shit my pants if I would go there. And I agree with him, that's scary as hell. And then the story continues on. Opie says, I look at the ground and there's a huge rock sitting there, where there had been no rock earlier, so I say fuck this, and step back inside, barricade the door again, and put the torch back in the hole by the front door. That's when shit started hitting all the sides of the barn. The scratching on the roof got worse, and I won't lie, I pissed myself a little because I was in the middle of the woods alone with little wooden bastards tormenting me. This goes on until I'd say close to midnight, and that's when things got really quiet. I mean the kind of quiet where you could hear a pin drop. I'm sitting by the fire. I've got one of the bigger sticks close at hand in case I have to beat something with it, and I'm telling myself that it'll be fine. They're just fucking with you, like the little assholes they are. It works a little, and I start pacing just to have something to do, and so my legs wouldn't get cramped from sitting if I had to run. It's quiet like that for close to an hour, and then it starts up even worse. And there were a few times I swore I heard little voices coming from the cracks and holes in the wall. Every now and then, I'd see something dart across the holes closest to the floor, but I tried to put it off as seeing things, then trying to rationalize that they wouldn't come in, as long as I had the fire going. That lasted all of about another 15 minutes when the fire started dying again. I reach over to grab some leaves to toss on, and I realize that the majority of the damn things are wet, so I switch my attention to the branches to see how they are. Sure enough, most of them are wet as well, but enough of them are dry that I toss them on the fire to build it up more, then move the leaves and branches closer to the fire to dry them out. That was when they started laughing. Their laugh sounded like what you would get if you rubbed a chalkboard with sandpaper, just magnified and all around me. I take it about 5 minutes before my brain yells at me to shut it up, and I grab a stick out of the fire and wait to see movement by one of the holes or cracks. I didn't have to wait long, and when I did see it, I jabbed the stick as hard as I could into whatever it was. The end was still glowing red, and when I felt it hit whatever it had made contact with, shrieked like it was in pain. Then the whole wood sounded off with the same shriek, just in varying pitches. That's when shit hit the fan. Something hit the back door hard enough to jar it loose somewhat, and something pushed the torch from its hole in the wall so that it fell out and hit the ground, rolling towards the center of the barn. I pick it up, figuring 2 weapons are better than 1. Then I hear something smacking against the front door. I run to the back door, kick it shut, and put the branch in a better position to bar it. Then toss the one stick in the fire while heading towards the front door. I kick it, make sure the branch holding it shut is still secure, then grab the second torch and head for the fire. I'm standing there, a torch to either side of me, looking from the front to the back, and just waiting for something to happen. And something did happen, just not what I expected. I started hearing my neighbors calling my name, and from the sound of it, my father, his best friend, and my uncle are with them as well. The assault on the bar stops like they're listening to them as well. And then I started hearing dogs barking and getting closer. I started yelling for them, and that's when something hit the back door hard enough to knock it off the hinges and break the branch acting as a bar. I swing around and start cussing, and do the only thing I could think of. I throw one of the torches through the doorway. I see movement scatter as it sails through the doorway, and I take that opportunity to run my ass out of there, heading in the direction I hear everyone shouting from. We meet up not too far from the barn. Everyone is worried about me because they can see I'm freaked out and my shirt is missing. I just tell them we need to get the fuck out of the woods ASAP. The neighbors and my father are all for it, but his friend and my uncle are wondering what the fuck is going on. Well, at least until we heard movement coming behind us fast and the dogs start going crazy. I look at them and say that they can stay in the woods if they want, but I'm getting out of there, and take off running from the direction they came, and they start following me. The journey back wasn't exactly quiet though. We'd have sticks or rocks thrown at us, and every now and then something would call out from the trees ahead of us, like they were marking our passing. We get back to the neighbor's house. Their grandpa is standing outside with an old shotgun and a spotlight. We get inside, and then ask me what happened. I tell them. My uncle and my father's friend laugh, until they see the looks on everyone else's faces. We stayed there for another hour, then pile in my uncle's old Jeep and beeline it for home. I never stayed out in the woods again, nor did I even go into them for the last year we lived there. Mate, it gets worse the farther down you go. The beginning of the driveway was like driving through a tunnel of trees. Then you hit our house and the farm. Then the rest of the way up the road is like that except for one spot. OP, I'm currently talking to the owner. Here was his response to the questions I asked earlier. I just need you to confirm these as true, and if not, what is the situation? A little over a month. The last tenants lived in residence several years ago. The is a family property owned and passed to current owners via trust in 2008. It sits on 1.9 acres and faces straight. Each property varies in bill cost according to its size, this being roughly 1,000 square feet. The cost is very low, excluding insulation, i.e. outdated windows and doors. Property taxes last I checked was about $200 to $300 yearly. I haven't turned the water on, but piping appears solid and intact. The home was built in 1961. The neighborhood is quiet and peaceful, a family-oriented community 1 mile outside the city limit, perfect for retirees and families. As far as I know, the house has been on the market for the time he stated, and the last tenants were myself and my sister when she took the lease from me in 2010. As to who owned it, I don't know. I know an older guy owned it when I was renting it, but I did all the rental agreement stuff with a realtor. The acreage sounds about right, and the hose does face the driveway coming in. I'm not sure about the bill since I was there during the summer, but it was well water. At least it did when I was there. The neighborhood is quiet because hardly anyone lives close enough to it but have some problems with noise. And the community I have no clue about because it could have changed since I was last there. I will tell you that the pipes will more than likely need to be replaced though, and new windows definitely put in because they're pretty loose and some of them don't lock. Found this pic on Google. Do they look something like this? If yes, they rather look like small treants than elves. Yeah, it's cool if you want. Also, have a short story about the demon thing my youngest sister told me earlier. She's out in the woods near the house playing by herself with her dog. She's maybe 9 at the time, she says, and she's out just dicking around in the woods to kill some time until her mom gets home. She's playing in this little makeshift fort thing the neighbors and I made, which is really just some smaller fallen trees interlaced with branches thrown on them vertically to act as walls. It's about midday, early fall, so the trees are just now starting to turn colors. She says she was just sitting there, drawing in the dirt, when her dog perked his ears up and started growling while backing up to stand in front of her. She sees movement behind a tree about 15 yards away from her, and that's when it steps from behind and just looks at her. The dog is going crazy loud, enough at this point that the creepy old guy that lived on the hill above us comes out of his trailer and calls down to see if everything is okay. Apparently, the demon looked at her, held up a hand, and held one finger up, then walked behind the tree and disappeared. She waits a few minutes while the dog keeps growling. Then she takes off for the house. She gets inside, runs to the room she shares with her sisters, and pretty much refuses to come out until mom got home. except she didn't make it home that day. She was in a car accident that really just banged her up really badly, and they kept her a few days to keep an eye on her. Sort of like that, but minus the branches on the back, and he's responding to the picture some guy sent earlier. Anyways, back onto some of the replies. This house and woods seem like a paranormal goldmine for a motivated X-file. I wonder if it's possible to trap a wood elf or if they're immune to that kind of thing. How tall are they, OP? How tall were they? Also, were they mean-ass looking like in the pics? They usually stood about 4 to 6 inches tall, though we did see a few that were closer to 8 inches. And the majority of the time, they did look mean as fuck. OP, do you think the demon and the wood elves were playing on the same team? Is there a connection between the two beings? Will do. Thanks for letting me know, Anon. We never found / saw a connection between the two, so I wouldn't know, to be honest. And then someone replies some weird shit post that is the normal type of shit that goes on 4chan, but it's not even worth reading. So anyways, back to the OP. First thread can be found here. Since the last thread was close to capping out on replies, I followed an Anon suggestion and made a new thread. For those of you now just finding this, here's a too long to read. My family moves into a house early February of 2000. Weird shit starts happening in the house in the woods. Demons and wood elves are involved. The neighbors up the road have some of the same happenings. Continue like this until move out of the first time in 07. Move back summer of 10. Weird shit keeps happening. I move out and sister picks up lease. That's the short version. Sorry if I miss anything. I don't think I ever shared anything that happened when I moved into the place a second time. Let me fix that. I moved into the place the beginning of May 2010. At least I think it was May. Might have been April. It was supposed to be me and 2 of my friends as roommates, but they backed out at the last moment on me, so I was stuck with the place to myself. The old creepy guy still lived in the trailer on the hill, but he stayed away from me because I wasn't a girl he could look at. It was myself and 2 dogs, both pit bulls, and I had a few rifles and 1 pistol because Second Amendment. And I remembered all the crazy shit that went on there the first time. I took the room that had been my parents' as my own, used the other 2 rooms as guest rooms, and put my computer out in the living room so I could see when people pulled up. My washer and dryer were both in the basement, so I had to go down there for laundry. Plus, that's where the breaker box is. First few weeks are relatively quiet, minus some bumps in the basement and the occasional animal moving around the place, so I wasn't too weirded out or anything. But one night when I came home from work, that all started changing. One of the first things I noticed was that all the lights were on in the place, which is something I never did to help cut down on the electric bill, and that both of my dogs were on my couch that I had sitting against the bay window, their tails standing straight up and both of them looking towards the kitchen. I unlocked the door, step inside, and usually they would be all over me, but this time they just stood there, staring. So I slip over to the gun case, grab the pistol, and chamber around, and clear the kitchen slowly, making sure the windows are still locked and that the back door hasn't been tampered with. I go to turn my back when I hear something slam into the wall in the basement, and my dogs start going crazy and rush over to me. I'm feeling kind of ballsy with a pistol and 2 big dogs with me, so I slowly open the basement door and reach for the light, then tell my dogs to go down. They of course don't listen to me, so at this point, it's up to me to fly solo and head down to check it out. I take a step onto the first step down, and something hits the wall again, to the right of the stairs. I freeze up, then remember I have a gun and start making my way slowly down the steps, making sure to look around once my head clears the lip of the ceiling. I don't see any movement, so I stop at the bottom of the stairs and look at the shelf to see if maybe it was a rat or something. Don't see anything. Figure it was a pipe slamming against the wall, and start heading upstairs when something hits the far wall where there are no pipes. I spin with the pistol raised and see nothing. At that point, I say fuck this, head upstairs, lock the basement door, and put a kitchen chair up against it to act as a secondary barricade, then hook the dogs up onto a leash, grab a rifle, and head outside to see if someone had been throwing stuff against the walls. The dogs are fine at this point, so I put one of them on a tether I kept in the front yard that allowed them to run the entire length of the front yard, then take the other one with me as I check the backyard. My dumbass gets back there and realizes I don't have a light to see, so I stand there for a few minutes to see if the dog picks anything up. But nothing happens, so I head back around, grab the other dog, and head inside. I set about making dinner with my pistol close at hand, some music on, in the living room and kitchen lights on when the power in the entire house dies. I cussed because I cut my finger when it went off, grabbed a bandage and a light, then unblocked the basement door to see if the breaker flipped or if someone had downed a line. The dogs are whining for some reason that I didn't find out why until later, but I ignore it as I step into the basement. I shine the light around in the dark to make sure no one was down there, then start walking behind the shelf to get to the breaker box. I'm almost there when I feel something tug on the bottom of my shirt, and I instinctively look down. I don't see anything, but I'm freaked out a bit. Speed walk the rest of the way to the breaker, see that none of them are flipped, then turn around to head back upstairs. When I turned, I swore I saw someone standing at the end of the shelf, and I could hear the dogs at the top of the steps whining and growling, so I hurried up the stairs, locked and barred the door, then called the electric company on my shitty cricket phone. I tried a few times to connect, but each time the reception was worse and worse until the phone itself just died. So I start getting some clothes ready so I could go to my mom's place until morning. The whole time I'm moving around, the dogs are on my tail, still whining and growling, so I finally tell them to shut the hell up because it's pissing me off. And that's when I saw movement in the living room. Couldn't do that at this place. At the time, it was still considered inside Winston city limits, and firearm discharges would have gotten the cops on my ass. To be honest, the thought never crossed our mind. The dogs start going ballistic, their fur standing on end and their tails tucked between their legs. I'm mentally cursing myself because I left my pistol in the kitchen and the gun cabinet is in the living room, leaving me nothing but a mag light and 2 dogs to fight with. Then, as quickly as the dogs start going nuts, they fall silent and kind of just fall asleep on the spot. That scares the hell out of me, but the next thing is even worse. The fucking demon walks out of my kitchen, holding my pistol in what I can only describe as a distasteful way. Like it didn't like what it was holding. It looks up at me, holds its free hand up, and doing that tisk-tisk movement with its trigger finger. It lays the gun on top of my gun cabinet, walks towards the door, and then the power snaps back on, and the dogs wake up looking around confused. I walk around slowly to the living room and look around not knowing what to expect, but everything is normal. I grab the pistol and look it over. Nothing looks wrong with it, but I decide I'll take it apart and make sure it's okay the next day. I hook my phone up long enough to get it charged to make a call, wake my mom up at 12:30 at night, and ask if I can come crash at her place for the night with the dogs. She initially says yes because, and in her word, I sounded scared to death and my voice was shaky. Pack a bag, grab my guns and the dogs, pile in my Jeep and head to her house. Her and my father gave me a lot of weird looks as I was transferring guns into the house, but I never told them exactly what happened. Someone asked for another story, so I'll share another from the second time I lived there. This happened a week after the power incident. I was off work that day and had a few friends over to shoot the shit and chill as we hadn't seen each other in a long time. There was myself, 2 of my friends, and 1 of their girlfriends. We're all sitting around smoking and generally having a good time when something starts knocking around in the basement. It freaks them out, and they ask what the hell it was. I laugh it off and tell them about the thing that haunts the place, and they kind of laugh it off because they think I'm bullshitting them. It keeps happening every few minutes, and finally, one of my friends asked me why I'm not checking it out. I shrugged and told him it's because it's nothing, but if he wants to check it out, he can do it. He says fine, walks into the kitchen, and unlocks the basement door, and starts down the stairs. We hear him get about halfway down and stop. Then something that sounds huge hits the basement wall, and he starts cussing and running up the stairs, saying I shouldn't play tricks on him like that. I ask him what he means, and he tells me it's fucked up to put a mannequin with a steer skull on it by this shelf, and that I knew it was nothing and tricked him into going down. At that, I visibly pale because, besides my family, no one has seen it, and he takes me going pale as a sign of guilt and pushes the subject. I get up, push past him, and head downstairs with him and the other 2 following me, and he's running his mouth until we're all in the basement. He starts cussing and asking how I hit it so fast because he wasn't too far behind me, and I just look back at him and tell him that what he saw was a thing haunting the place. Even tell him to walk around the shelf if he doesn't believe me. He does so, sees nothing back there, and turns to me slowly. then asked what the hell he just saw. My grandfather died of cardiac arrest, and her husband fell down the stairs in his rush to call the EMTs, ended up breaking his hip and right leg really badly to the point he had to miss her funeral. I explained to him all I know about it and what usually happens when it shows up, and he starts freaking out and runs upstairs and out to his car, cracks it up and speeds out of the driveway. The rest of us get out of the basement and head back to the living room. My friend's girlfriends asked me to tell her a little bit about the stuff that happened, so I do. About halfway through the story, we get a call from the friend that left that he was heading to the hospital because his younger brother had been in a really bad mountain bike accident, and the last thing he said to me was that I should move the fuck out of the house before something happened. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I was sitting at the computer when I saw movement behind me in the screen. I turned slowly, and the damn thing is standing in the hallway with its arms outstretched, and I got the feeling it was trying to tell me that what had happened wasn't meant to happen to my friend. It turned, walked into the middle room, and the dogs came running out of my room into whining and growling. The guy's brother ended up being okay, just some broken ribs and a couple deep lacerations on his torso and one on his forehead, but he never came back over to the house. Always had me come over to his place or meet somewhere. Post a picture of your gay house, homo. I've one more story in me. Then I really need to get some rest for tomorrow. Not really looking forward to going into the place, to be honest with you guys. I think I'll tell you all about the events that made me move out. This was a little over 4 months into my lease, and even though I was getting used to things, I was getting tired of being woken up or coming home to shit being messed up. At this point, my dogs were at my mother's house because of an earlier incident, so it was just me and myself in the house. It was around 1:30ish at night, and I'd finally fallen asleep to the sound of more and heavier thuds in the basement. I was exhausted from work and figured if something was going to kill me, it was going to have one hell of an easy time doing so. I was nice and cozy in my bed and dead asleep when I woke up abruptly because I felt someone standing over me. Reach over and switch on my lamp, and of course, no one is there, but the feeling isn't going away. I sit up and look around and notice my bedroom door is open a bit. I always closed and locked it just in case. So I grab my pistol from the side table, chamber around, and slowly make my way to the door. I get to it and slowly push it open with my free hand, finger on the trigger in case something tried to jump me. But nothing happened. I did a quick search of the house, made sure the windows that could lock were still locked, and made sure my ghetto alarms on the ones that couldn't lock were still good. Ghetto alarms equals string and a lot of cans. I get back to my room, lay down and turn off the lamp, and just lay there. A good 45 minutes pass and I'm almost back asleep when I hear what sounds like shrieks coming closer to the house from the backyard. I'm laying there listening, and they're definitely getting closer to the house. Whatever is making them stops underneath my window, then darts in the direction of the front yard. Here it is from the last thread, and this is a picture of his basement. Absolutely terrifying. But anyways, back to his story, OP's story. I'm sitting there wondering what the fuck that was because it's something new when I start hearing a weird laughing noise coming from the driveway. I grab the pistol, walk out into the living room, and turn on the porch light to see movement behind my car. I call out that I have a gun and that whoever it is needs to step away from my car or I'll shoot. The laughing stops, and then my power goes out, leaving me standing in the dark with a crazy someone or something in my driveway. I hear movement and see something walking around my car and making its way up through the yard, and I call out once more that I will shoot. Thing takes off running at me. I squeeze the trigger 3 times in quick succession, and whatever it is takes off shrieking across the driveway into the field on the other side. The power decides to turn back on, and the crazy old guy neighbor I had comes running down the hill with an old rifle, yelling what the fuck I was shooting at 2 something in the morning. I tell him someone was fucking with my car, and he comes walking up and switches on an old flashlight, one of the ones with the huge battery on it, and pans it over to my car. There's red handprints all over the damn thing, and I think it was someone screwing with me until the old guy wipes a little off, smells it, and gags, then has me smell it. Turns out the red stuff was old blood. The cops got there about 8 minutes later, the old guy having called 911, then left the phone off the receiver so he could run out and check on whatever was happening. We both get ordered to drop our guns, and we do so, and then they walk up with guns drawn, asking what the hell the shooting was about. I start telling them, and when I get to the part about shooting at someone, 2 of the cops start walking around my yard looking for a blood trail. I get questioned for a good hour while they bring in a canine unit because apparently they'd found a trail, but the dogs lost it in the field. You mentioned it appearing around the shelf in the basement before. Have you tried digging around there? Also, has the demon ever spoken or have you ever spoken to it? That's all the ones I have now until tomorrow, and I'm living about 20 minutes away from the place now. I get hauled into the station and questioned more. My pistol gets taken from me as evidence, and for all intents and purposes, I'm held that night in jail as a precaution. In the morning, they apologize, tell me I can come back in 2 weeks to get my pistol, and send me on my way. My damn car was impounded as well so they could gather the blood as evidence, so I ended up having to call a friend to come pick me up, which was awkward having to explain to him what had happened. I get back to the house, check everything out, then start packing my shit and looking for a place to crash until I can find a new place. When I went back to the station later to get the pistol and my car, I asked them if they'd had any luck finding out anything. The cop looked at me and said it was best not to think about it, and that I should probably look for a new home. Don't know if that means they knew something about what happened or not, but I'm almost positive they did. Nah, never thought to try it. It is a cement floor though, and a good thick one at that, so it would take some doing. As for it speaking or us talking to it, I never said anything to it, and it never said anything to me. But according to the middle sister, it said something to her, but she won't say what it was. OP has a death wish. How do I have a death wish? Probably because you went back to the house you grew up in, damn well knowing it was haunted with a fucking demon and wood elves, then proceed to shoot the demon/elves enforcer. Draw something here. OP, can you give a full description of the steer skull demon? You mentioned you've caught a long glimpses of him before, and your sister's in full daylight. You recalled his head isn't clean. It's like he's been buried and rotted. What's his suit like? Same deal? Musty and buried looking or clean and tailored? What color? How many buttons? Tie, vest? Did he have gloves or even hands? I'll draw it if you can describe him to me. Hey, I've been wondering. You said in the very beginning there was a chalk outline of a person on a wall in the basement. Anything else on that? Any lurkers have a theory? I don't know what part of the basement it was on, if near the shelf thing. Could it be related to the demon bro? Also, while there, try leaving the wood N-words in offering. Ham or some shit. Bitches love ham. I think in this point you can ask her. She will get it off her chest and we might get some valuable information. Tell us about the fire incident in OP, and I guess someone went looking into the history of the house. And then keep asking questions. OP, which one of your sisters started living in the house after you? I may have missed this detail. Plus, was she the same sister that was R-worded? Mate, at the point I moved back, I had 0 fucks to give. So it was a win-win for me if crazy shit happened. Suit's the same deal, a 3-piece. Black, nicely tailored, besides looking like it's been through hell. It had hands, but they looked burned. From what I saw in the vest, it was the same black as the jacket. Tie fluctuated between black and red, depending on who saw it. As for the amount of buttons, I think it had 4 buttons on it. The outline was directly across from the shelf on the front wall. We painted over it at one point in an effort to seal the walls against moisture, but never finished it. Never really thought about it if it was related to the demon till now, but it might have. I can try to. She's kind of hard to get in touch with and a bitch to boot. Jesus, I forgot about that. That had to do with my youngest sister and the 2 boys from the neighborhood doing something in the backfield. I don't know what exactly. The oldest sister, and yeah, she was the same one. Haven't gotten around to drawing out the elves yet. We'll try to do once I'm home. Also feeling really apprehensive about going up there today. But I'm not gonna bitch out. I'm gonna be going alone again though, so wish me luck. Yeah, if that's what it was doing, and no, it's one of those things where it appears, does whatever it does, then disappears. I have to agree, I love that pistol. I'll ask the oldest sister. She has all the pictures and stuff from our childhood. It never did anything to us, at least as far as I can remember. It just always showed up before we got really bad news or something bad happened to one of us. I never got the feeling it wanted to hurt me, but my younger sister said she always felt like it was going to do something to her if it ever caught her completely alone. As for watching the house, I never did. But I would just sit outside on the porch sometimes when I was home alone just to stay out of the house. Whenever you were there by yourself, it started feeling oppressive, like something wanted you to leave. I'm on the way home. We'll upload once I'm there. Sorry about the wait. Car broke down when I left the place. Pick dump commencing, and sorry for the shit quality. Front door was unlocked. The back door was kicked open. And the OP shares some stories of his trip back to the house that he's been telling the story about the whole time. And it is nothing short of terrifying. The first picture is a picture of the house, a broken down tree in front of it, and then him walking up to the side of the house. I mean, really, really dirty place. Then him going inside. Nothing inside the house, wood walls, wood floor. Looks like no one's lived in it in a while. And then he takes a picture of the bathroom or some sort of hallway. I mean, the pictures he shared are terrifying. And then some sort of kid's room, I think. Purple walls, plywood floor, and then some creepy text on some plywood in a drawing. And then back to what he was saying. He said, found this in the closet of the polka dot room. I don't remember us drawing or writing that. We love you, B. Can't make out the last word. And that's what it says. The basement stairwell, creepy as hell. I apologize for the shitty quality of these last 3 pictures. I just really did not want to be down there by myself, and I can't blame him. Look at these pictures. I mean, they're super blurry, like he said. You had to take them really quickly, but jeez. I mean, terrifying. And there's still a lot of the story to go over, but this is why I love this thread in particular, because yes, it is paranormal. Yes, I don't usually like paranormal stories, but this guy has the receipts to prove that this is a real house, and it's creepy as hell. But anyways, let's get back to the OP story. Do y'all want a few more stories tonight, or can I take a rest and just get shit-faced? Or I could do both, it's whatever. Not like I'm sleeping tonight. What year was your sister R-worded in the house, OP? Fuck it. Both it is then. I'll start with another one from where I lived there the second time. At the time, I had a girlfriend that didn't live too far from me, and sometimes she would come over and spend the night with me because between work and life, we rarely saw one another. One night, we're both in bed and I'm passed out cold, and she shakes me awake and puts a hand over my mouth. This freaks me out because I've just been woken up and it's pitch black in the room and I'm in a freaky ass house, but I calm down when I realize it's her, and I ask her what the hell she's doing. She does the shh motion and leans in close and whispers that she's been abruptly woken up and seen someone standing in the hallway. She liked to keep the bedroom door open at night, so her dog could come and go as she pleased. I immediately think someone's in the house and grab my pistol, slide out of bed, then step over to the door as quietly as I can so whoever is out there won't hear me. Peek my head around the corner, don't see anything. So I step into the hall fully and start heading towards the living room. One of my dogs is with me, and he kind of perks his ears up and starts that low growling, so I have a feeling I know what she saw. I step into the living room, look around, and see movement outside at the very edge of the light from the front porch, so I walk over to the front door, check it to make sure it's locked, then make my way to the back door to check it as well. I step into the kitchen and hear something moving down these stairs, so I stop because I know there's a good chance that it's the demon fucking with me, but I gotta check just to make sure. Step to the basement door, move the chair, unlock it, and fling it open because I'm tired and just want this to stop. Flip the light on, look down the stairwell, get a cold chill. So I try to make the dog go down first, but he refuses to, so I say fuck it and start walking down. I don't have any plans on dying anytime soon. Sorry, Enon. Thanks, mate. Really. Late 2010. I hit the bottom of the steps, look around, walk around the shelf to make sure no one is hiding behind it, then start walking upstairs because I'm naked and the cold-ass basement isn't doing me any favors when something slams into the outside basement door hard enough to shake it. I beeline it upstairs, flip on the outside lights, unlock the back door, and I'm outside with all 3 dogs pushing past me to chase after whatever it was. My girlfriend walks to the doorway and asks if I think she should call the cops, but I tell her not to worry about it because they won't find anything. She looks at me kind of funny for a little, then goes back to the bedroom as I try to get the dogs inside. I hear them chasing something up the road for a little ways, and then they finally come running back and jet straight inside the house like they're scared. I shrug, to close up the back door and relock and barricade it and the basement door, turn the living room light on, then go get dressed because I know I'm not sleeping anytime soon. I end up actually passing out in my chair and getting woken up by the morning by my girlfriend asking why I came back to the living room last night. I asked what she meant, and she said I'd come into the room when she was half asleep and lay down with her, just so I wouldn't freak her out. I told her I'd heard something outside and wanted to make sure no one was trying to break into the house, but it seemed like she accepted it. Not really scary, but still. Next one coming up. I'm still here, mate. Was taking care of something. Let's go back to the first time I lived at the place. This is something that happened one day when it was just the 3 girls and I home. Can't remember if it was December of 03 or December of 04. It's also the first time the oldest girls got a good look at the wood elves. We're all 4 in the backyard, digging around in the snow, having a snowball fight and just generally being kids. It's a little before noon, and we all decided to go in and warm up a bit and grab something to eat before getting back to pelting each other with snowballs. We're all sitting in the living room, around our kerosene heater. The place has baseboard heaters, but they don't work. When the oldest sister points out the window towards the field across from the house and asks what's making the tree limbs move up and down. I tell her it's probably a squirrel or something, but she insisted that it was something else because she couldn't see the squirrel. I tell her fine, let's all get dressed and we'll go check it out before heading around back down to continue our battle. So we all bundle up and set off out the door and down the front yard, get to the edge of our yard and stop. And the movement in the trees starts getting closer and closer. A few bouncing tree branches later, and whatever it is, moving stops in one of the pines closest to us. We're staring up at it, wondering if whatever it is causing it will show itself, when one of the little bastards pokes its head out through the pine needles and looks straight at us. We're all standing there, dumbstruck. Me because I hadn't seen one that close, and them because they'd never actually seen one before, when another one not too far from the first one kind of shimmies onto a branch and stands up looking at us. The middle sister, let's call her Bessie, says something along the lines of she doesn't like the way they're looking at us, reaches down and scoops up some snow, packs it into a snowball, and throws it at one in the pine tree. I call her an idiot, and the younger sister, let's call her Mary, elbows her and yells that she shouldn't do that, while the oldest has pretty much notes back inside the house without saying a word. Bessie said something along the lines that she doesn't care what they are. She doesn't like the way they look, so she's going to do whatever she wants to do to them. Then leans down to scoop up another handful of snow. I look up and see that both the elves are gone, and I get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach and tell the 2 girls we should get inside. When Marie agreeing with Bessie, saying screw that, but because she wants to hit them again. About that time, a rock about the size of a golf ball comes flying out of the woods and smacks Bessie right in the forehead and actually draws a little blood. And she starts screaming bloody murder and throws the snowball in the direction it came from and shouting about how she'll burn all the little buttholes for hurting her. Out flies another rock and gets her in almost the same place as the first one. And at this point, I look at Mary, and it's like an unspoken agreement between us that we should just leave Bessie to whatever they're going to do to her. We didn't like Bessie, and she didn't like us, but she's only a half-sister, so fuck her. We turn tail and start off for the house, and Bessie realizes what we're doing. She runs and tackles Mary, saying that if she gets hurt by them, then Mary is too. So I turn around, kick her off Mary, scoop her up, and take off to the house. Yeah, I'm a shitty person for that, but fuck Bessie, seriously. Mary and I still don't get along with her at all, and the oldest sister just tolerates her. Anyway, back to the story. Bessie is crying because I kicked her, and now there's a steady stream of rocks flying at her and hitting her in the back of the head. And you can see that some of the ones hitting her head are making her bleed. Has anyone considered if this is a ruse to sell a crappy old house? I'll see if I can find some cheap ones and try that. I get back to the house and set Mary down, then turn back to watch Bessie struggle up the front yard. The rock barrage is starting to die down, and she's looking at me with these little hurt-filled eyes like she's begging me to come help her. I'm not really proud of what I did next, but I remember closing the door and locking it, then drawing the blinds. Mary and the oldest sister, let's call her Nicole, start screaming at me to let her in because she's our sister, and how could I be such a cold-hearted person? I just shrug and say that she started it and deserves whatever she got, then go to the bathroom to take a piss. While I'm in there, they let Bessie in, and you can hear her crying and asking for our mom and saying she was going to tell our father what I did. But to keep from getting a worse ass beating than what I was already going to get, I went ahead and cleaned up the cuts she'd gotten. Fast forward to 3 hours later, and our parents are pulling in the driveway in our uncle's Jeep. Bessie runs outside instantly to tell them what happened, and I can see the look on our father's face, thinking I'd done the cuts. He starts off towards the house, and about that time, another rock flies out of the woods and smacks Bessie in the jaw, and she starts bawling. Our mom and uncle saw it, and think I'm in the woods until I walk out asking what they want. All 3 of the adults look at me, then towards the woods as another rock sails out and pegs Bessie in the back as she runs for the house. Our parents get in, Uncle leaves, Mom cleans up the cuts better, and our father beats the shit out of me with a fishing rod for not trying to help my sister. I tell him what she did and I get beat again for back-talking, then sent to my room. That's the end, but whenever Bessie would be outside near the woods, branches and rocks would get thrown at her hard. Mate, I'm actively trying to dissuade people from buying the house. I hate that fucking place, and if I knew I wouldn't get caught, I'd burn it to the ground. At the house, all I heard was some banging in the basement while I was upstairs, and I heard something in the woods while I was outside taking pics for y'all, but that could have been anything. Okay, while she's asleep, I have a little time to tell one or two of the three I have left. Do y'all want to hear about Christmas of '03, the pond, or the night the neighbor boys, my little sister, and I had a Mexican standoff with the damn things? No, he had been angry before they had the split. He did get a little worse after that though. Mexican standoff it is. This happened after the first frost of '06, so it was late October if I remember correctly. The neighbors had bought their two sons each a .22 rifle because they'd wanted to squirrel and rabbit hunt. My mom bought a little break action, .410 for my sister to do the same. And I had a little .22 I'd bought for myself just to target shoot with and maybe hunt with. I know I had no intentions to try and use the thing for shooting at the elves, and I'm almost positive the others didn't either. We'd already did a few little hunts during the day, so we were fairly okay at it at the point this occurs, and we were all decent shots, with my sister being the best for us. For whatever reason, we all had decided to do a little camp out in a small bell-shaped hollow right on the edge of our backyard. So, we were pretty close to our house, if we had to get away or something bad happened. We had two little tents, one for each pair of siblings, a sleeping bag for each of us, our weapons, ammo, a first aid kit, water containers for each of us, matches, and two flashlights. The day before we were set off for our little adventure, our father took off one of his trips, and our mom had set off looking for him. Both our other sisters went to a friend's house for the weekend, leaving just Marie and myself there. We let the neighbors know that, and they were still cool with it happening since we'd still be close to the house. So, Saturday morning comes along. We're all packed up, head out and set up our camp, set up an area for the fire, and gather wood and kindling, then head out to see if we can bag some squirrel or rabbit. The morning hunt went pretty okay, each of us bagging at least 1 kill apiece and nothing out of the ordinary happening. But that was usually the case early in the morning. We head back to our camp and set about skinning and cleaning our kills, congratulating each other. We dig a hole once we're done and bury the guts, plug it back up, clean up, and then Marie and I set about cooking the meat and heating up some canned veggies we'd bought with us, while the neighbor boys, let's call the oldest Will and the younger David, start setting up these skins for drying. They loved keeping them so their grandpa could use them for making moccasins and other stuff. Things are going great. We're all having a great time and enjoying the time away from our parents, and in Marie and my case, other siblings. We finish cooking, eat, then set up cans from the veggies up out in the woods between 15 to 20 meters out, and start having a little competition shooting. We do that until a little after 1, so we gather up what was left of our cans, head back, refill ammo, then decide to go exploring the woods because we were feeling pretty badass with the guns and a stomach full of food. Plus, it was usually sunny out. We ended up saying fuck it and rolling through Joe's land, cutting a path right down the middle of one of his properties, while skirting his wide open one. We also took a wide berth around the pond, for reasons I'll explain in a later story, cut across the driveway, and pushed up toward a part of the woods none of us had been to before. The thing about this part of the woods was that it was a little thicker and mostly filled with close together pines, so it wasn't as lit as the rest of the place. We're figuring we can get a few rabbits in there for dinner and maybe make a stew out of them. So we set off a little deeper into it and start trying to look for signs that what we were hunting went through there regularly. We ended up spending a good 3.5 hours looking and waiting, but ended up empty-handed, so we start making our way out of there. We're almost out of there when Will goes, psst, to get our attention, and we turn to see what he's pointing at, a rabbit maybe 30 yards out. I should clarify the last bit. When I say out, I mean it was inside the thicket with us, off to our right. The thing was pretty large for a wild rabbit, so we all agreed it would make up for the dry spell while we'd been waiting. We didn't want to fuck up and miss, so I passed the rifle to Marie, who knelt, shouldered it, took a few deep breaths, sighted up, then squeezed the trigger. Her shot hit true, and the rabbit dropped like a rock. and there were congratulations as we walked over to check out the kill. The rabbit was what I'd say a good 22 pounds. Fur was a little lighter than other rabbits, and it had a single streak of gray that went straight down its head. If I can get in touch with the neighbor guys, I'll see if either they or their dad has it still for pictures. Marie collects her kill and stores it in her game bag, and we set off back to camp a little lighter in spirits since we gotten a meal for the evening. We ended up getting 2 more on the way back, so our day was going extremely well, giving each other shit like friends do, telling jokes, and waxing philosophical like kids sometimes do. It was about 5:30ish when we got back to the camp. The sun was low on the horizon, so while Marie set about getting the kills skinned and cleaned, Will started building a fire. David went around collecting more wood for the night, and I ran up to our house because I'd forgotten the damn stew pot and tripod. Takes me about 10 minutes to get up to the house and back because I checked the phone to make sure our mom hadn't called. Took a quick shit, then collected the supplies. By the time I got back, the fire was going nicely, and Will and David were assisting with the skinning and cleaning. I get the tripod and pot set up, then finish up. I start cooking while they bury the guts and start the skins. We're all still going with the jokes while I cook, and Marie pulled out a harmonica she always carried and started playing it. Normal camp stuff. Food gets done and we eat our fill, take the pot off the fire to save, and we all sat around having a good time. I'd say it's close to 8 now. The moon is out in force and there's not a cloud in the sky, so the woods are pretty well lit by night standards. Will starts up with a game we used to play, and we all start laughing when we hear something off to our left atop the hill that overlooked the campsite. We all jerk our heads up in reaction, and we stare up but don't see anything because of the height and angle. We figure it's a rabbit out on a night stroll and go back to talking, but we're doing it a little softer than before. We hear it again. Again, we look up and see nothing, and we laugh it off, but we all kind of forced it. We do get our guns though, and now we're sitting there almost whispering when we hear it again. But it doesn't stop when we look. Not until it gets to the edge. We still don't see anything, but then we start hearing something move to our right, and our attention shifts. The noise stops, and then we hear something from our back, the one on the side of Joe's property. Attention shifts again. We all whisper to keep a separate eye on them, so we pick a spot apiece and keep an eye on it. And for a little, that keeps it from starting, but then they all start up and get to about 25 meters out and stop, all except the cliff one. It just had a few more join it. We start hearing scratchy noises, and little figures start popping up in the trees at the 25-meter mark. We all 4 instantly know what's up. Rifles and shotgun gets grabbed and not raised. We see that some of them are holding rocks and large sticks, so up come the guns and we take aim. The ones with weapons rear them back like they're gonna throw, and we all freeze, each group waiting to see who starts it. Marie whispers something about what we should do, and I say we should stay where we are because who knows what the hell is gonna happen if we move. How tall were these things? Been following this post all weekend, and man, this is a riveting story. They look like they belong to nature or are nature elementals. A good hour passes like this before we start hearing noises slowly coming towards us. So Mary backs up because she's facing the rear, grabs a stick out of the fire, and tosses it out to see if she can see what it is. On her end, she said it was about 10 of them crawling on the ground, and they were about 15 meters out. She raises her shotgun and takes aim, and the things freeze, then scurry back to the 25-meter line. Will takes a quick moment to toss some more wood on the fire, then turns back to the side. I'm switching between right, rear, and left because I figure they won't come from the front. It was right on the edge of the open field, and trying to think of a way to get the hell out of the situation without having to shoot a fuckload of wood elves and more than likely getting murdered by a massive brown wave of shrieking stuff. We stayed like that another 3 hours. Will periodically feeding the fire, us occasionally throwing a torch out when we hear movement, and them attempting to get closer to us, once getting to about 8 meters before Mary threw a few more torches out to scare them off. A little after 12, we hear a car pull into our driveway, and Marie and I look at each other because we know it's our mom. She starts calling out our names, and we start yelling for her to bring the car around back right now. I guess she heard something in our voice because we hear the car crank up and her speed down on the driveway into the back. The headlights hitting our campsite. We see the elves scatter from the trees, and we yell for our mom to stay there with the lights on as we start packing our shit up and putting the fire out. We start backpedaling out of the woods, our guns up just in case, and walk up to the house. Our mom drives around front and comes in, asking what happened. We explain it to her. She gets quiet a little bit and then says there were a few in the trees around the left side of the house, which is why she had called our names. And then OP starts replying to some of the comments made on the thread, and then he says the height is between 4 to 6 inches, sometimes a little bigger. We all stay up all night, and in the morning our mom runs the boys back to their place. Marie and I take our guns and head back down to the campsite to make sure the fire was out and to see if we could find any trace of the elves. And I know I keep switching between Mary and Marie. Whenever I'm reading, I just can't seem to keep it straight, but I think it's Mary. But for some reason I say Marie, so sorry if you guys have already commented that or gotten mad about that pronunciation. But yeah, whenever I'm reading, I don't know. It's hard to keep track. But anyways, back to it. Only evidence anything happened here were the burned torches we'd thrown out and small spots of the ground cleared of leaves, like something had been laying there and had gotten up in a hurry. We didn't camp out there again. And now my daughter's awake and I gotta take care of her. I'll try and post another one later. Which one did y'all like? The pond it is. The pond was only about 11 foot in length and maybe 8 feet wide, but it was about 15 foot deep, which was dead center of the pond, and almost no shallow end. It was literally just a 15 foot deep hole in a rough cone shape. There was an old zip line above it, with the piece you hold on to stop exactly halfway over it. According to Will and Davis, Dad and his brothers, it was like that because when they were younger, they put it across and one day they'd been playing on it and had been Bill's turn to ride it. He'd gotten halfway across it when it had froze up, and he fell into the lake and hit the side of it, which was the case of his paralysis. His brothers jumped in and got him out, then ran home to get their parents, leaving him there alone. Bill told me this next part a little while before he died. Because he knew I liked knowing about the place, and he had once promised to tell me why he had his nephews, and I swear we'd stay away from the place. After his brothers had left, he'd been laying there on his back, when he'd heard the sound of something coming out of the water. From where he was, he couldn't see what it was, but he said that whatever it was had started laughing softly with a gurgling sounding throat. He heard footsteps come near him, then suddenly the trees had wood elves all in them, and they were pissed off, making a hissing noise. Whatever it was stopped walking and made what sounded like a growl. Then the elves started throwing rocks and sticks at whatever it was, causing it to retreat. Soon after that, he heard his father's truck speeding down the driveway, with the sound of sirens not too far away coming their way. He said that he knew the elves were bad, but whatever had come out of the lake was bad enough that the elves didn't like it. Will and David stayed away from it because the few times they had gone close to it, they had gotten a bad feeling like they were being watched, and the water would look like something was moving around just beneath the surface. The one time I decided to go take a look at it, I threw a fairly large rock into it, and moments later, a burst of bubbles rose to the surface like an air pocket had escaped. Marie stayed away from it simply because she couldn't swim and was afraid of deep water. Another weird thing about the thing was no matter how much it rained or how dry it had been, it always stayed the same depth. And before you ask how I know that if I never went near it, you could see it from the driveway when you're walking. How did Bill die? I've been following the thread, but don't recall you mentioning his death at all. He died of complications with an acute respiratory infection that he never really got rid of. I never mentioned it because it wasn't relevant. I'll try to do that. Quick question. In relation to your house, where was your neighbors? Let's say we look at your house dead on from the driveway. Would it be left or right of your house? If you have the specific address, that'd be nice. I'm trying to spot the pond. Assuming the zip line was there, that must have meant there were trees on either side of it. Is this the pond? It looks cone-shaped, but it's hard to tell. If you're standing in front of our house in the driveway and looking dead on at our house, it would be almost directly behind us, and to the right a little bit. About a quarter, maybe a little bit more than a mile up the driveway. That looks like the general area, but I can't really tell. This was where the neighbors lived, and he shows a Google Earth picture of the house. This area is where we went camping, shows a picture of where they went camping relative to the house. And then he says, I have no idea. In a bit. The black circle is the area the pond is in. The red is the one field of Joe's. So that's the field Joe owns. The black circle shows where the pond is. And I guess the gray is also where all of Joe's land is. And then he says this is roughly the spot where Marie saw the demon when she was in the woods alone. And a little bit farther from the house, doesn't look too far. And then he says, I've got no idea. I just know he was a former Hell's Angel with connections still, and I didn't want to cross him and something happened. The blue squiggle is roughly the area the creek is. The black is where Bessie pissed off the elves. So he's given us some context, super interesting. And then he says the brown area is where the old guy lived. Yellow is the chicken coops, and the red is where we had our bonfires until the one incident and moved them to the front. Very interesting. Was that all there was about the pond story? You just heard about the evil wet thing from Bill and never fucked with the pond much yourself? Yeah, unfortunately, I never did, no. Because of how close it is to Joe's land and how much of an asshole he was if he even caught you near his places. That, and in order to even get near the place on foot without busting your ass going downhill, you have to go onto his land. What was Joe's deal? Was he ever growing dope or something else illegal? I've got no idea. I just know he was a former Hell's Angel with connections still, and I didn't want to cross him and something happened. And then he just talks about the same thing. What did this old guy do? Just hang out at his cabin all day, whittling wood? Did he have a job? Just trying to imagine his life, what with being surrounded by demons and tree elves and screaming little kids, lol. He was disabled and a little out of it mentally. Maybe late 50s, early 60s. I know he got disability, which is how he paid his bills. And he liked finding broken lawnmowers and shit to try and fix. Caught him stealing cable from us a few months into us living there. I should be able to tell the last one without making a new thread if I just condense the hell out of it. Let's see if I can. Christmas of '03. I got my first pellet rifle, and Mary got a BB gun. We're home that night, after visiting our grandparents. Mom's at work, our father has gone fishing with his friends, so it's just us kids till sometime after midnight when Mom would be home. Started off normal. Mom left about 4, father left about 5:30. We're enjoying our gifts. 6:30, the one guy who we can't seem to catch walks up on the front porch and starts trying to get in. The oldest sister calls the police while I point my pellet gun at him and Bessie hides. Mary is standing with me with her BB gun. Gun runs round back and tries there. We run into the kitchen and do the same as the living room. Guy hears sirens coming and runs off. Police don't catch him. Things are kinda calm after they leave, 7:30ish, when the power goes out. Gotta go downstairs to check breaker. Get cold chills cause creepy basement. Run to breaker. See it's flipped. Flip it on. Feel something touch my back. I'm alone. And laugh. Turn around and beeline upstairs. Knocking on the floor starts with banging in the basement for 30-ish minutes. Stops. Bessie goes out to walk her dog, so does Marie. I stand on porch in case crazy guy shows up. Wood elves pop up in the trees on the hills and just watch us. Random knocks start around the house when we go in. Last until 20 minutes before Mom is supposed to be home. See someone or something run down the driveway from the direction of the road towards the farm. Mom gets home. We have a late night Christmas dinner with just us cause fuck our father. Guy shows back up and tries to get in. Mom gets a Ruger and calls the cops. Mary and I have our guns as backup. Repeat of earlier when we heard the sirens. Except this time, our mom runs out after him. He takes off and fires a few rounds after him. Cops find nothing. Rest of the night was quiet. I'll ask Mary once she gets home from work tonight if she has any. Maybe message the other two and do the same. I'll see if Will has any he'll tell me. But I'm open for questions, so I'll make another thread soon. I cut a lot out of it, mate, to try and make it fit into this thread. I'll tell it in full when I make the new one. Since the last thread reached its limits, here's the new thread like a few Anons asked for. Feel free to ask whatever question you'd like, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Plus tell a few stories as I hear them from my sisters/neighbors' kids. How many people would you say knew about the Wood Elves, and all the mysterious events that had happened? And any more stories about the pond? I was actually wondering about your daughter. Did you end up getting married to the girlfriend you mentioned in the one story, or is this a separate thing? Also, has she, your daughter, had any supernatural experiences? Altogether, I would say between 18 to 20, because of the neighbors' parents and their brothers had a few friends who knew of them. I don't have any more stories about the pond yet. Haven't gotten a response from Will. No, this is a separate thing altogether. Her mother and I aren't even on talking terms, nor does she have anything to do with her, as per the wishes of her mom. She has the normal 4-year-old experiences with monsters under her bed, and an imaginary friend she calls Mr. Bean, but that's all, as far as I know. To be honest, I wouldn't know where to begin. Plus, my voice is shit because it's all gravelly. Fire story it is. Well, it isn't much of a story, but it's what I could get out of Marie. and she admittedly didn't remember too much about it. She was home from school sick, our mom was at work, and our father was passed out in their room like the lazy fuck he was. She went out to take her dog for a walk, walked him down to the back field. He started barking and jerked his leash out of her hand and started chasing something. Comes running out a few minutes later scared, and Mary sees a few elves in the trees. She gets pissed off, runs up to the house and grabs a gas can and a lighter, takes it back down, makes a few makeshift torches and throws them at the elves. The torches miss, hit some dry grass and set an area on the field/woods on fire. She freaks out and runs inside to wake her father, who calls 911 when he sees the fire. Fire department comes out and does their job. Mary gets her ass beat for trying to burn the woods down, and the elves stopped messing with us for a few months. So I was wrong about Will and David being a part of it. Reposting from last thread because I really want to know what you think about this. OP, I've been lurking since last thread and I can't help but wonder. Are you sure the demon guy is malevolent? From what I've read so far, the only thing he's done is spook you and possibly spoon your girlfriend. The tree elves, on the other hand, have been aggressive on several occasions. The barn incident, throwing shit at your house, etc. Is it possible that the demon is a spirit of the house while the elves are spirits of the forest and are the real baddies? I mean, from what I've seen, something bad happens when the demon shows, but is it possible that it warns you of the danger rather than causes it? Food for thought. Update for you guys. My daughter woke up at 4 something this morning screaming about a skeleton-faced man in a suit trying to get her. Got her to explain to me what it looked like, and it sounded like the demon. Any advice on stuff to do in case it followed me back here? The cockmongler using my name isn't me. Ignore him. I have no idea, but judging by what happened this morning, I'm going to lean towards the not too friendly idea. That's worth a shot. I never did anything to them besides poke at one when they were fucking with me in the barn, so they might be up to chat. Pretty sure they know already. Jesus. I wonder if it followed you home. I mean, you did go into that cellar. Anything bad happened shortly after? I plan on it if I can find/borrow a better camera, and hopefully am able to make it there during the day. I'm hoping we actually get something for y'all. At the very least, get better pics and some vids. Not that I know of. That whole thing caught me off guard though. She's never woken up screaming like that, and I know I haven't talked about it to around her. At work right now. Talked to Marie earlier, and she's coming over later to dictate a few stories on her own to me so I can share with you guys. How's your daughter faring after the nightmares? Keep us updated on her. I'll definitely need help. I know next to nothing about video editing and shit like that. She's not doing too good. My girlfriend told me that when she picked her up from daycare, the lady there told her that she'd woken up screaming during nap time. I asked her about it, and she said that the scary man had come in her dream and tried chasing her. This is not okay. Physical people I can scare or beat the hell out of when they mess with my little girl. But demons and shit, I can't do jack shit about. Hence why I asked about things to do banish stuff like that. Thanks, mate, so do I. It's all cool, mate. So, story time. I'm gonna try and keep them short tonight, guys. These are a few that Mary told me, so they're all from her perspective. First one she told me happened the last year we lived there. It was summer, and she was walking up the driveway during the day to go hang out with Will and David. Mostly David because she had a crush on him. Nothing happens during the walk up there because it's day. She gets to their house and ends up staying until a few hours after nightfall because they were all playing something. She goes to leave, realizes it's dark out, and asks Will and David's parents if they'll give her a ride down. Unfortunately, they can't because their dad's brother has the car and he's at work. So Mary borrows a flashlight and a bat, gathers her courage, and starts walking down the driveway. Will and David's dog following her until she hits the curve in the driveway that's pretty much the end of the neighbor's driveway and turns into the main one. She's walking and whistling to herself so that she doesn't get too spooked, and it works for a little. She gets past the area with the abandoned house and the small barn I hid in, thinks she's in the clear, and starts to relax a little because that spot always freaked her out the most. She keeps going, gets near the area with the pond, and starts hearing something stirring the pond up. This scares her because as long as we lived there, she'd never heard anything mess with it, so she starts speeding up. She said when she got parallel with the pond, she heard a wet plop sound, what she described as what a soaking wet towel sounds like when you smack it against a wall, and that's followed by groaning. For some reason, she stops and looks over at the light to see if she can see anything. Doesn't, so she flicks it off and starts walking again. Thing is, I feel like I have to go back there, like something's tugging me to. She's about 15 feet from the spot the noises are coming from, when she hears something whisper her name, but she described it like someone talking through water, like it was frothy and full of bubbles. She stops, looks around with the light again, sees something shuffling through the brush and the trees near the pond. She doesn't get a good look at it, but then she starts hearing a lot of something moving through the trees higher up and moving toward her fast. She starts speed walking, casting the flashlight beam around, and every now and then she catches a glimpse of a few wood elves in the trees heading toward whatever was moving in the trees. About then, according to her, she starts hearing big rocks and branches hitting something wet, and then a watery scream that she described as whatever it was being extremely pissed off. She takes off running for home, gets to where the farm is, and stops to catch her breath since the house is right there where she can see it. She hears something thudding through the trees along the creeks coming fast, shines the light down the road where it's coming from, and sees it hit something that's slightly reflective, like it's slimy or wet. The trees in the area start going crazy with movement. The 2 dogs we had outside start going nuts, and she takes off the rest of the way home. She gets inside panting and red-faced. Our mom asks her what the hell happened, and she tells her something was chasing her. Our mom gets quiet for a little bit, sends her to her room, and goes out to check with the big spotlight we had in her pistol. Meanwhile, the dogs are still going nuts. She's outside for a bit, comes inside, locks the front door, tells Mary not to go back outside that night. That's the end of that one. No, there's a part of Winston-Salem called Old Salem that goes back to colonial times. After reading some of the shit below, these bastards could have brought anything from Czech Republic over with them, conjured something up, or the archaeological excavations they are doing may have stirred up some shit. Or not, but enemies seem old mate. Salem was founded in 1766 by the Moravians, a Protestant religious group that first organized in what is now known as the Czech Republic in the 15th century. The Moravians were active missionaries who established an earlier settlement in Bethlehem, PA, before settling Wachovia in the North Carolina backcountry in 1753, in the Wachovia tract of nearly 100,000 acres. Salem was developed as the central administrative, spiritual, craft, and professional town surrounded by 5 outlying congregations. The town of Salem has a rich and deep history, with the restoration supported by many different sources of historical documentation and research. Core material is the primary source information published in the records of the Moravians in North Carolina based on records held by the Moravian Archives, Southern Province in Winston-Salem. In addition, documentation such as private papers, historic photographs, and artistic renderings, as well as ongoing research of buildings, objects, and archaeological resources have been critical to understanding the town's history. Time for another story from Mary. This one involves Bessie as well. It's about 2 weeks after Mary walked home from the neighbors. She's outside shooting her BB gun. I'm working. Mom's at work as well. Our father was some fucking where, and the oldest sister was at her boyfriend's, leaving Bessie to babysit Mary, though she barely needed it. Bessie comes outside to yell at Mary to come inside and help her clean the kitchen like her mom asked Bessie to do. Mary tells her to fuck off and do it herself like she's supposed to be doing, and goes back to shooting. Bessie comes out and snatches the rifle from her, throws it a few feet away, and starts screaming at her to get her ass inside and do what she says before she calls our mom and tells her that Mary wasn't listening to her. Mary doesn't take kindly to being yelled at by someone like Bessie, so she hits her and they start fighting. This goes on for about 3 minutes when they both stop because they feel like they're being watched. They both look up and into the field across from the house, and there are a few dozen elves in the trees just watching them fight and Bessie getting her ass kicked. Bessie, still pissed off at Mary and now at the elves, walks over and snatches up the BB gun, takes aim, and pulls the trigger and actually hits one of the elves. It falls from the tree squeaking. There's about 5 seconds of everyone just standing there. Then the woods go ballistic. In a repeat of the snowball incident, stones and branches start getting thrown out at Bessie, and Mary says fuck this and takes off to the house. Bessie cranks off 3 more BBs into the woods before she drops the gun and takes off after Mary, the entire way being chased by stones and sticks. The two get inside and lock the doors. The dogs are going ballistic at this point, and they grab them and hide in my room. I'd sort of boarded my windows up. Guess they thought the elves couldn't get in the window, and waited. While they were sitting there, they started hearing things hit the roof and the outside walls like someone was throwing rocks at the house. An hour or so passes like that, and Mary says that Bessie should go grab the phone so they could call their mom and let her know what was going on. Bessie runs to the living room to grab the phone and Mary hears her scream about the time she hears something break through the bay window in the living room. She runs out, the dog's going nuts, and finds Bessie in a corner in a huge stone laying in the middle of the floor, shards of the window scattered around it. Mary picks up the phone, calls our mom, and tells her what's happening, and Mom says she's on her way. Mary hangs up and asks Bessie what had happened, and Bessie refused to tell her, so Mary pushed and pushed until she finally did. According to her, she'd walked into the living room for the phone and had saw movement outside. She looked out, and about 6 elves were holding Mary's BB gun on the porch while another one was bashing it with the huge stone. They all looked up, saw Bessie, shrieked, then the one with the stone threw it through the window at Bessie. I don't know why they didn't go in after her, but they didn't. Mom gets home and sees the wrecked gun and window, figures Bessie got mad at Mary for some reason and messed it up, and that Mary had chased her with the rock and threw it at her from outside. The two girls swore up and down that they hadn't done it, and that neither of them could have thrown the rock because it was so big. Mom has them both try and lift it, but of course, they don't know, and she figures they're just playing. So she tries to do it herself and gets it up, but it takes a lot of effort to do so. She figures then that they're telling the truth, calls a window place to have them come take measurements and put a new one in. She tells the two of them not to say anything to our father about it, and that she'll get a new BB gun. Pretty much Bessie stopped going outside at that house unless she had to, and Mary stopped shooting outside unless I was with her, or she was shooting in the front yard with people home. Mom covered it up smoothly with her father, so he never found out about it, because if he had, he'd have beaten both the girls and Mom because of it. I'm gonna go check on my daughter, then see if I have time for one or two more. Hello everyone, sorry for not posting anything yesterday. I had a few things come up that needed my undivided attention, so I'll post a quick update for y'all. 1. I could not get up there today. The friend that was supposed to come with decided it would be a great time to catch the stomach flu, so I'm asking around the rest of my friends for a replacement for tomorrow. If I can't, I'm gonna end up going it alone again. The demon decided to show up in both of my daughter and I's dreams last night, and I'm pretty sure that at least in my case, it was because I was thinking about it. It's gone from chasing my daughter in her dreams to just being barely out of sight and watching her. As a just in case, I'm contacting some Catholic churches around here to see if any of them will send someone over to bless our place. Don't know if it'll work, but I remember one Anon suggested it. Can y'all just let this die? Please? Why? OP got in trouble with the demon and his daughter is in danger, so yeah, we should let this die. Because I don't want to think about it, or ever really see anything about it anymore, to be completely honest. I'm done with that place. I'm sorry to disappoint y'all. I really am. I just don't want to go over to that place, nor am I involved with anyone wanting to go back. I have my daughter to worry about, and her nightmares have just been getting worse, and so have mine. My therapist is the one whom suggested I stop talking about it though, if y'all want someone else to get angry with. Hey everyone, it's been a while since I last talked about that shit that was going on with my daughter having the nightmares, involving a demon that somewhat haunted my sisters and I when we lived in a certain house as children. Some of you may recall that after visiting the house, the demon started showing up in my daughter's dreams and either just watching her or actively chasing her. I should mention that I never talked about the demon around her, so I was understandably caught off guard when she described it perfectly. I did as some of you suggested and found a Catholic priest that agreed to baptize her, and that occurred around January 19th. As heartfelt as y'all's suggestion was, it didn't help. It really only made things worse. Now she wakes up screaming, but doesn't remember the dream. She stopped wanting to sleep unless I let her sleep with me, and even then, it's pretty damn fitful. He started showing up more in my dreams as well, but I can pretty much chalk that up to me having him on my mind a lot recently. My therapist had me start keeping a dream journal as a way to help keep track of dreams, plus it helps me remember some of the stuff I blanked out as a kid. Nothing else yet, but a few interesting things have shown up. Anyways, do y'all have any more ideas that I could try to get rid of them? OP here. Jesus, I didn't think this would still be going. But I have an update. I had to pick her up early from daycare today. One of the workers there forced her to take a nap, and 10 minutes in, she woke up screaming and flailing around hard enough that she gave one of the assistants a nosebleed. When I asked her about it, she said that the skull man had asked her if she wanted to come with him. She says she kept telling it no, and that each time it would get more and more irate with her until it finally grabbed her, and that's when she woke up. She seems okay right now, but it's got me nervous. As for the suggestions I'm seeing about making/getting her a dream catcher, we're already way ahead of you, thereby about a year. I think some kind Anons posted links to him earlier. As for what it doesn't really do anything. When we were living there, it would show up before we got bad news or some bad shit was about to hit the fan, but that was it. Though according to my middle sister, it once spoke to her. When it shows up in my dreams, it just kind of stands there, not quiet out of view, and watches me. In my daughter's, it's a mix of watching and actively chasing. I really do not want to go back there, unless absolutely necessary. I never thought about that being the case. Fuck me. Nah, I'm almost certain it's a steer skull. I've seen enough deer skulls to know that I'm not touting one of those around as its head. It's easier said than done. I can't really get rid of my notes my therapist has on it, but I can try the rest. I mean, hell, it can't possibly make matters worse than they already are. And since some of you requested, I find a pic of the skull close to one Demon Bro wears as a head, pic related. Just adding scorching and dirt to the bone and the horns would be more damaged, like they'd been used to beat against something. And then the big picture of the skull he included. And then he continues on saying, I'll give it a shot. Hell, anything is worth at least an honest attempt at this point. Huh, never thought about trying that. I'll give it a try the next few weeks and see if it helps. She says it talks to her, but it sounds like it's muffled. She doesn't have problems understanding or hearing him, but she says it just sounds like something's covering his mouth. Why in the hell would I want to conjure something that I want to get rid of? And I doubt it's trying to teach me/my daughter a lesson, since it stopped showing up after I moved and only reappeared once I'd visited the place. And that was the last we'd ever heard from him. Since then, that was the last he's ever posted about it, so we don't know what happened to his daughter, what happened to him. Did it continue? But, I mean, in all honesty, it's very disturbing. I wonder if it truly was something paranormal. I wonder if it was something mental illness related. I wonder if it was. But, I mean, it's terrifying that this all spooked him enough to never post an update. But it doesn't stop here. Someone visited the house that he grew up in, and we're going to get into that. I mean, this only gets creepier and creepier. Hey everyone, Scream Cap guy here. Yours truly actually went and investigated the house while the last thread was still alive, but by the time I got out there and came back, the thread was dead and NC Anon was gone, so I never posted the pictures I took. Recently, I was looking through the pictures and decided to make screen caps of the threads. I wasn't going to upload the pictures that I took since I thought it might ruin the fun and magic of the story, but some Anon requested I do so, just that, so here we is. And that's how it was written. The first picture shows the driveway to the house. The black box you see is my car that I had to park at the entrance due to the poor state the driveway was in. The driveway was also a total bitch to find due to the entrance being overgrown with brush, and the fact that if you put the house's address into Google Maps, it takes you to an empty piece of land next to the house. The house itself you can't see from the road, nor the empty lot due to the trees. The house in all its glory. The view is from the driveway. Very creepy. Front yard, and for everyone just listening instead of watching, I mean, just overgrown everywhere, trees fallen, road, or the house is very, very worn, so to say. Front yard. The tree had just barely missed the house. The picture was taken from the front yard facing the driveway. Due to the tree, I had to go around the left side of the house and go to the back door to get in. Left side of the house. Left side of the house showing the living room window. I can sort of make out two white/skull faces in the window, but that's probably just pareidolia, which is your brain making up stuff, and I agree. There really isn't anything there. Left side of the house, I think. Back of the house. Back of the house showing the garage, driveway, and a shack. I think the driveway went from the garage to the road and was also shared by a neighboring house, but I can't remember. The back door. The pure darkness that you see is actually the basement entrance, giving this cool optical illusion. The back door was left open, and at this point, I will point out that there were no trespassing signs, and I did not break and enter. The back door was left open, and I was looking at the house as a potential buyer. The kitchen. It was immediately obvious there was nothing of value in the house. There was also the smell of water damage. And to be honest, I mean, this was like a snook note, or just me talking, the house doesn't look horrible, especially since it's open to the elements and animals could have gotten there, but he did say water damage. And then he shows the living room. You can sort of make out a pair of eyes in the big window, but it could just be anything. And I agree, it's nothing. But you can see that's where the wood elves threw the rocks in through the window. The hallway, another cool optical illusion here. You can make out a white head and face inside the bathroom. And I'm looking myself and I can't really see anything, but it definitely is unsettling. But it's just the condensation. Okay, cool. Closet. I don't remember if it's from the hallway or a room. Another closet. Again, I don't remember if it's from a room or the hallway. I completely forgot about the writing in one of the closets that NC Anon found when he went back into the house, so I didn't think to look and see what it said. My bad. The polka dot room. And then he goes to the basement. The basement stairs. I'd like to just take a moment and bitch about these stairs. You would never miss the leg day due to these stairs. I'm over 6 foot and my knees were in my chest just trying to walk up these damn stairs. And just, holy shit. Look how creepy these stairs are. Imagine a demon down here, which the Anon, the OP was suggesting. A demon down here. I can't imagine. It gives me goosebumps. The basement. You can see a few orbs, but we all know orbs are bullshit. You can see there's standing water in the basement, so, insane water damage. The basement, you can see the garage is kind of imploded in. And the last picture I took was of the shack outside. Well, that's it for me. Nothing really eventful happened while I was there, thankfully. I kept my eyes out for the wood elves, but didn't see anything. I also didn't feel anything either while inside the house. With that said, I'd strongly advise against going yourself to investigate, as it's been a few years now, and there's probably new owners. Owners who more than likely don't want neckbeards hunting for wood elves on their property. Thanks for reading. If you're reading this, NC Anon, I hope you and your daughter are doing better. And once again, before we wrap up this video, I just want to give a big thank you to MyHeritage for sponsoring this video. Make sure to go to the pinned comments and the description, follow the link, and look at the QR code on screen right now and sign up. It'll be awesome. You'll love it, just like I did. Thank you so much for MyHeritage for sponsoring this video. And wow, that wraps up some terrifying 4chan threads, or a terrifying 4chan thread, but I love this one. I really thought this story was great. It was amazing. I loved the guy who went in to investigate at the end. I mean, it just shows how creepy the house was. But what do you think? Do you think the entire neighborhood that Anon was a part of is full of shit? Is there wood elves out there in North Carolina, or is there not? What are your thoughts? I mean, I don't know. I've never been a big fan of paranormal stories in general, but this one kind of got to me. It seemed very authentic and honest and just creepy and believable. I mean, who knows? Maybe they were suffering from mental illness of some sort, hereditary mental illness. That's why the daughter, suffered from it as well. Who knows? Shared delusions. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but maybe it was something paranormal. It's very creepy, and I'm glad the investigator went out and saw it, because those pictures, even though it's bad, don't condone it at all, going into someone's house, I think it was very, very creepy and just showed how truly terrifying living in that house must have been. With a demon in the basement, some crazy guy outside trying to break in, and wood elves that would throw rocks at your forehead. But I love this story, a long-ass story. Would you like to see more long stories in the future, long videos in the future? I mean, this video is 2 hours and some, so definitely not short, but I really enjoyed reading it out for you guys. I hope you guys liked it as well. Thank you so much for watching. This was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.